In the DC world, I start with Ultraman. While this video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyright or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 1. Beam Ray Victory. Metropolis Skull Gang base. With his back to the energy beam that seemed to tear everything apart, Jello had no time to turn around, and just barely dodged it by leaning sideways. Although the purple energy beam brushed past Jello, it still left a deep gully and a lot of radiation. Jello glanced at the wall and the ground that was still glowing with residual heat, and a guess suddenly arose in his mind. What would happen if he took the attack head-on? Stay away from Mr. Simon. The angry voice sounded again, and the same terrifying purple energy beam came towards Jello, but this time Jello was fully prepared. Jello placed his right fist on his waist and his left palm flat on his chest. The Ultraman locked the target, and a green light instantly shot out from his forehead. Aim beam. The slender aim beam collided with the thick purple beam, and the two collided violently. Although the purple beam looked magnificent, it could not take down the tiny aim beam for a long time. The power of the aim beam, which has been added with some kryptonite properties, is not weak, and is even stronger than the purple beam emitted by the mysterious man. At the collision point of the purple beam and the aim beam, a small collapse phenomenon occurred. Simon Pons looked at the scene in front of him, and his eyes almost fell out. Fuck, what a monster I have created. At this moment, Simon Pons knew what he had done. Moreover, the most important thing is that this monster created by himself may indirectly kill himself. So Simon Pons ran away, trying to escape the next explosion range. But unfortunately, it was too late. Due to the crazy output of Jello and the mysterious man, the collapse phenomenon became more and more obvious. After reaching a threshold, it suddenly exploded. Boom. The violent flames filled the eyes of everyone present, and the explosion set off a violent shock wave, which directly took the entire underground base of the skeleton gang into the sky. The explosion formed a huge column of flames, like a fire dragon rising into the sky, breaking through several layers of concrete and steel, and finally reaching the ground, turning into the most beautiful fireworks in the night sky of the metropolis. In the distance, Superman's big red cape fluttered with the impact of the explosion, and Dick beside him also put on a helmet, as if to protect against radiation. "Is this the huge radiation source you mentioned?" Superman said with a cold face. Dick immediately became worried about Zero's situation, but he still nodded and said to Superman, "Yes, but do you think Ultraman can survive such an explosion, Superman?" Hearing this, Superman patted Dick on the shoulder and comforted him. "He is Ultraman, my brother, he will not die so easily." Just now, as soon as Dick lost contact with Zero, he notified Superman. Superman evacuated the residence within a radius of 2 blocks at his fastest speed and brought a machine for removing radiation. Superman used his X-ray vision to see through the strong radiation that could interfere with most of the world and saw 3 figures at the core of the explosion. One is Zero in 7 armor, one is Simon Pons who was still alive in the explosion, and the other is a skeleton with purple flames all over his body. Ultraman is still alive, although he seems to lack energy. Superman said with relief, and there was even a hint of pride in his words. "Really? That's great." Dick was relieved. "You go first, kid." Superman looked at Dick and said, "The radiation here is too strong. You'll get hurt even if you wear protective clothing." The smoke produced after the explosion was still rising. Zero and the skeleton with blazing purple flames all over his body confronted each other. Purple flames, skulls, strong radiation. Zero guessed that the man in front of him should be one of Superman's enemies, Atomic Skull. Unexpectedly, he was transformed by the skeleton gang so quickly. "You actually want to hurt my friend? Unforgivable." Atomic Skull roared, and the purple flames, which were essentially a large amount of atomic energy, pushed him forward at high speed, and suddenly came in front of Zero, and a straight punch covered with blazing purple flames hit Zero. Jello was in deep pain at this moment. The next moment, he used his telekinesis to move 2 spacium swords in his hands and formed an X shape to block the bombardment of the Atomic Skull. This guy is simply a walking atomic bomb. Jello was surprised by the strong radiation from the Atomic Skull, and even the spacium sword showed a trace of melting. So Jello increased the output of the aim particles in the armor and his own spacium particles. The spacium sword in his hand was like a layer of coating, and the Atomic Skull could no longer mount the 2 swords. "Calm down," Jello roared, and his shoulders suddenly exerted force. The two long swords swung out violently, and the 1,000-pound force instantly repelled the atomic skull. We must fight quickly, Jello thought secretly in his heart. At this time, the atomic skull noticed Simon Pons, who barely survived the explosion, and immediately ran to Simon Pons without caring about the battle with Jello. "Mr. Simon, what's wrong with you? Can I help you?" Atomic Skull said sincerely. Simon Pons wanted to say, "Stay away from me, the radiation in your body is killing me," but he couldn't speak at all. His eyes went black and he fainted, and then he lost his life completely. It was really ironic that his savior died in his own hands. Seeing this scene, Atomic Skull was shocked, although there was no emotional change on his skull face. But Jello still sensed the increase in the radiation index around Atomic Skull. "You killed my savior. I'm going to kill you." If Atomic Skull had a face, he would be furious at this time. He roared at Jello, and the atomic energy in his body became very unstable. "Calm down." Jello felt nauseous and wanted to vomit. The radiation around him was too high, even higher than what the 7 armor could withstand. He staggered twice, then said, "If you stop now, your Mr. Simon can still be saved." "No. It's because of you that Mr. Simon will die. I won't forgive you." The Atomic Skull's emotions became more and more unstable, and the atomic energy in his body was about to explode. If he was allowed to explode at this time, Metropolis, Ultraman. Superman's figure instantly appeared on the scene. He grabbed the Atomic Skull and threw it into the air. Several white circles appeared in the air. Jello understood what he meant, and quickly formed an L shape with his hands, and then fired a beam of light. Beam ray. Golden light gushed out from Jello's arm, forming a stream of light, which hit the Atomic Skull when Jello was very weak. Chapter: seriously injured. Metropolis. High concentration of particles continued to condense into golden beams and blasted towards the Atomic Skull. Under the bombardment of the beams, the Atomic Skull had to use more energy to offset them. But Jello was also fighting for his life at this moment. He completely ignored the loss rate of the conversion of spacium particles into Waymaring particles and continued to fire the beams with all his strength. After bombarding with beams for almost a minute, several electric sparks crossed the light weapon on Jello's arm, and there were continuous cracks. "Damn it. I haven't avenged Mr. Simon Pons yet." With the wailing of the Atomic Skull, Jello stopped firing the beams. The Atomic Skull, whose strength was mostly consumed by the beams, was unable to support his body, so Jello used his ultra-telekinesis to support him, which ensured that this guy did not fall to death. The Atomic Skull lying on the ground did not look as impressive as when he first appeared. The purple flame on his head flickered and looked like it would be blown out at any time. After dealing with the Atomic Skull, Zero seemed to stagger a little, and almost fell into the ruins. "Are you okay?" Superman's voice, which sounded very safe, sounded behind him. He supported Zero. "I didn't cough." Zero was trying to hold on a second ago, but the next second, he felt a sweet and fishy smell in his throat, and couldn't stop spitting out a mouthful of blood. Even through the 7 armor, Zero felt that his skin all over his body was as uncomfortable as if it was burned by fire, and his nose and ears couldn't stop bleeding. Although separated by the anti-perspective armor, Superman could still feel that Zero's physical condition was very bad, and he quickly picked up Zero. Now every 0.1 second of delay is dangerous, and the situation is urgent. Superman can only send Zero to ultralight for emergency treatment. Superman didn't care about arresting the Atomic Skull, and took Zero to the small warehouse where he rented. "Hurry up and save Zero," Superman shouted anxiously, with sweat on his forehead. Zero, who was held by Superman, was still coughing from time to time, and Superman could hear Zero's heart rate decreasing. This god of the world who could hold up the sky would not show such worries even when facing the overwhelming alien fleet. "Start transmitting now." Oi's voice sounded, and a blue light flashed, bringing the two to the interior of Ultralight. As soon as they entered the interior of Ultralight, Oi sent Zero to the best medical cabin and connected Zero to various life support equipment. Looking at Zero lying in the medical cabin, Superman scratched his hair a little irritably and said with great concern, "Zero, please don't get into trouble." At the same time, the charming woman Alyssa appeared at the ruins in a red dress, and beside her was the hunched Dr. Cheston. The radiation everywhere seemed to be unable to harm the two of them. Alyssa glanced at Simon Pons, who was burned to charcoal, and said disdainfully, "Stupid guy, it's better to die, but Dr. Cheston, this monster you created is really good. Thank you for the compliment, thank you for the compliment." Dr. Cheston couldn't wait to kneel down and lick Alice's feet to express his sincerity. But Alice's eyes suddenly changed, and she took out a pistol from nowhere and pointed it at Dr. Cheston. Looking at the black muzzle, Dr. Cheston was almost scared to pee, and his frightened eyes were full of incomprehension. Why did he create such a powerful monster like the atomic skull, but he still had to be killed? He didn't understand. Don't understand, right? Alice smiled playfully, then unlocked the safety of the pistol and said, "If you are still alive, it means that the atomic skull can be copied. As long as you die, the atomic skull will be the only one. Just because of this." Dr. Cheston said in shock. Alice's finger was already on the trigger, and she said slowly, "Yes, that's right. This way I can sell him for a higher price." "What?" Bang! Alice pulled the trigger, and after the gunshot, a splash of blood splashed out from Dr. Cheston's chest and directly pierced his heart. Bang bang bang, but this was not enough. Alice fired several shots in succession, piercing Dr. Cheston's throat, brain, spine one by one, and threw another grenade before stopping. She was wearing a high-slit red skirt, and a few drops of blood were stained on her charming face, making her look even more unapproachable. After completely killing Dr. Cheston, Alice came to the side of the atomic skull. She pressed a ball that did not look like it was made on the earth on the atomic skull. With a click sound, the atomic skull was wrapped in something that looked like a coffin. After doing these things, Alice raised her right hand and pressed her ear, reporting to someone unknown. "The most important person is not dead, he is still alive. I will bring him here. You did a good job, the money has been transferred to your card." The mechanical synthesized voice sounded on the other end. "What's the next step? What should I do?" Alice had asked. "Take the atomic skull and hide." The mechanical synthesized voice sounded again. "Remember, our target is not just Superman." "Understood." After hearing the order, Alice licked her lips with her tongue like a python, and then disappeared into the night with the atomic skull. Time passed quickly, and this somewhat long night finally passed, and dawn gradually appeared before the eyes of the world. This morning, all the residents of the metropolis knew about the explosion last night, the fire dragon that broke through the sky, and the sealed area. It was as if a war had taken place. In the ultralight, Zero slowly woke up from the medical cabin. Sensing Zero's awakening, Oya quickly removed most of the life support equipment and opened the medical cabin. "Oya, how is my body now? Give me a mirror." Zero, wearing a hospital gown, said to Oya. "The radiation from the atomic skull is too strong, and even wearing armor cannot completely isolate it. The radiation intensity of the Chernobyl incident reached 20,000 roentgens, and the radiation intensity of the atomic skull is far more than this. Fortunately, Superman is here, and the remote location means no casualties. But even if Superman provides Kryptonian technology to remove the nuclear radiation there, it will take at least a month for the nuclear radiation in the place to return to a level that is sufficient for people to live. Are you really sure you need to check your status?" Oya asked Jello. "What do you mean?" This was the first time Jello heard the word uncertainty from Oya. Although he was nervous, he still said it. "Sure. Okay." After receiving Jello's instructions, a full-length mirror appeared in front of Jello, reflecting Jello's figure, and Jello screamed on the spot. "Ah, Zing is smart and excellent." In the ultralight, Zero's wailing echoed throughout the cabin. He raised his trembling right hand and pointed at his completely bald self in the mirror, saying, "Why am I bald?" Now Zero is more like Lex Luthor's brother than the brother of Superman, Jello Kent. High-intensity radiation can cause hair loss, and even Zero is no exception. "Ah. How come I look like I changed my last name?" Zero, wearing a mask of pain, wailed. Although Zero had thought about the fact that high intensity caused hair loss, it was still difficult to accept when it really happened to him. "You're in a worse condition when you were first sent here by Mr. Clerk." As Oya spoke, he presented another report to Zero. Zero browsed the report while Oya spoke. "When you were just sent here, 99% of your skin was ulcerated, your internal organs were bleeding, your immune system was close to collapse, your nervous system was damaged, you lost consciousness, and your genetic factors were damaged." Listening to Oya's report, Jello wondered how he survived, and when he heard that his genetic factors were damaged, he couldn't stand it. This is a bigger deal than being bald. "Oya, how is my genetic factor damaged? Tell me quickly," Jello said worriedly. Hearing this, Oya placed 2 holographic projections of human genetic factors, but the genetic information far exceeded that of normal humans in front of Jello. The one on the left is your previous genetic factor, and the one on the right is your current genetic factor. Oa said to Jello. From the overall point of view, the two genetic factors look similar, but Jello noticed something wrong. He pointed out the place where the change occurred and said, "Oa, zoom in on this place." Understood. Then, a strange place appeared in front of Jello. Although Jello didn't know much about genetics, he could still see something wrong. He pointed to Oa and asked, "Oa, what is this genetic information related to?" "This genetic information is related to the spacium particles you produce. If there is a problem with this genetic information, the spacium particles you produce will undergo unknown changes. In addition, as time goes by, your genetic factors will undergo more changes." Oa's calm voice made Jello very uneasy. Hearing this, Jello gritted his teeth and ordered, "Hurry up and prepare the particle test, Oa." Understood. Oa, who received Jello's order, quickly prepared the test room, and the ball Jello ran in at the fastest speed. An empty spacium energy core appeared in front of Jello. Jello stretched out his hand and placed it on it. Then he concentrated his mind, and a steady stream of new particles began to be generated in his body and injected into the spacium energy core. Only after the entire energy core was filled, Jello, whose face was a little pale, stopped and said to Oa, "Detect the particles as quickly as possible, quick." "Yes." Then, Oa mobilized the resources of the entire spacecraft to detect the specific situation of the new particles. About 3 minutes later, Oa presented the specific values to the anxious Jello. "This is your particle value report. According to the test, your particles have not changed much compared to before, but there is one thing you need to pay attention to." "What?" Jello asked, finally relieved. "Your particles seem to be not very stable." Oa replied. Jello frowned and asked Oa, "Not very stable? Is it unstable that will collapse, or unstable in an uncertain form?" "It is unstable in form. The new particles can change into other particles according to your ideas, no longer limited to spacium particles, and according to the current results, the loss rate of this process is only 0.00001%. Listening to Oa's diagnosis, Jello didn't know whether to laugh or cry for a while. He was still worried about the extremely high loss rate when spacium particles were transformed into Wayne particles a few days ago. Unexpectedly, a battle solved this problem that had troubled him for a long time. To confirm this result, Jello stretched out his left hand. He looked at the palm of his left hand, then concentrated his mind. A group of white spacium particles appeared in his palm. With a thought, the white spacium particles turned into green amarin particles, and then changed back. With a slight increase in the output power, the spacium particles turned into platinum-colored cinnabar particles. There are still many particle data in the database of ultralight, including metalium particles, stream particles, shakecium particles, and even many particles that cannot be sorted out in a short time. As long as Jello knows the values of these particles, he can use this new particle to transform those particles, and he doesn't have to worry about the loss rate. According to your habit, you should be able to name this particle, right? Oa, who was familiar with Jello's habits, asked Jello. "You're right, Oa." Jello smiled, and after thinking carefully, he said to Oa, "Since this particle changes randomly like a shadow, let's call it a phantom particle. The name of the new particle is phantom particle. I will record it in the database." Recording completed. "Any other instructions?" Oa said. "No more." Jello shook his head and said, "Where did the brother go? Did he leave any words?" "Mr. Clared left the ultralight after you were out of danger, but he has also asked for a 2-week vacation for you, so that you don't have to worry about the school and rest at ease." These are his original words. Oa played the recording of Superman Brother, which made Jello feel very warm. He rubbed his eyes and read it to himself. "In that case, I have to work harder to train, study and improve my armor during this time. Oa, add an extreme environment response system to the No. 4 armor. I have a feeling that I will meet that guy again." Oa asked habitually, but doing so will make the No. 4 armor even larger. "Are you sure?" "Sure, even if the volume is increased to 5 meters, the No. 4 armor must be equipped with an extreme environment response system." Jello said with certainty. Originally, the design of the No. 5 armor was about to be completed, but now it seems that we have to redesign a set of energy core systems. No, all armors have to be replaced with new energy core systems. Jello did what he said, and he was also extremely smart and quickly ran into the laboratory and began to design a new energy core. Zendike leaves with new armor. Time flies, and a week has passed quickly. Even Jello, who hides in ultralight all day and night to improve the armor, has short hair on his head. On this day, Jello was improving the new energy core at the workbench as usual. Jello, someone is looking for you. Oi's voice sounded in Jello's ears wearing goggles. Who is it? Jello was a little confused about who would come to see him, so he ordered, turn up the surveillance for me to see. Okay. Then Oi called up the surveillance of the warehouse, and a thin young man wearing sunglasses came into Jello's sight. Dick. It's him, let him in. Jello's eyes lit up, took off his goggles, and then asked Oi to bring him down. Ultralight flashed a blue light, and Dick's figure suddenly appeared in front of Jello. He didn't react to the transmission system and he took a vigilant fighting posture. Hey, friend, don't be nervous, this is the transmission system of my spaceship. Jello hurriedly stepped forward to dispel Dick's vigilance and said that everything was normal. Transmission system? Dick frowned and said, then looked around and said, is this the spaceship that sent you to Earth? The whole space was silver-white, and all around were filled with various instruments. On the work table behind Jello, there was an unfinished energy core. It's just my spaceship, not the one that sent me here. Jello smiled slightly and said, I suddenly appeared in the farmland. After a little sigh in his heart that the ways these aliens came to Earth were really varied, Dick also said to Jello, how is your body recovering? I saw Superman was quite nervous that day. No sequely left, right? Not bad, but my hair needs to grow again. Jello joked, and then asked Dick, why did you suddenly come to see me today? Oh, I came to say goodbye to you today. Dick said heavily. Jello hesitated, say goodbye? Yes. Dick nodded, and then said to Jello, I'm going to Bloodhaven, which is as dark as Gotham. I want to bring justice to the people of the city. Not a bad ideal. Jello smiled and said, then I wish you good luck. I'll go to you for a drink when I come of age. I'll treat you then. Dick smiled and agreed. If there is something you can't solve, come to me. Although I'm not as strong as Superman, it's still easy to tear a tank apart with my hands. Jello took out a communicator and handed it to Dick. It seems that we had the same idea. Dick looked at Jello with a playful look, then took out another communicator from his pocket and said, you guys with superpowers always overlook some things. When you need reasoning or other help, come to me. Ha 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 ha. The two exchanged communicators, and then Dick left the ultralight and embarked on his heroic journey. Jello still had to complete his energy core. He put on his goggles again and continued to adjust the new energy core. Zero picked up the tool and adjusted the internal structure of the energy core. About 5 hours later, Zero completed the final adjustment. As the energy core glowed blue, Zero knew he had succeeded. Happy Zero called out, Oya, move US-01Z out, I want to modify it. Okay. After hearing Zero's order, Oya brought the armored cabin containing US-01Z to the studio. Squeak, a lot of white gas came out when the armored cabin opened, and the black and grey No. 1 armor appeared in front of Zero. Reaching out and brushing the cold No. 1 armor, Zero whispered. Finally, you have a chance to live up to your name, Zoffy. Then, Zero began to improve the No. 1 armor Zoffy. 3 days later in the test field of ultralight, a silver-ebb figure slammed against the wall. When he got closer, he realized that it was Zero wearing No. 1 armor. Oya, put away No. 1 armor first. Zero shouted with lingering fear. Okay. Oya calmly put away the No. 1 armor, and Zero also landed on the ground. Recalling what happened during the test, Zero was still in shock. His hair, which had grown with great difficulty, was almost gone again. It seems that the Zoffy armor can only be used for emergency purposes in the future. Although the destructive power of the light is still higher than that of the No. 5 armor that is being manufactured, it is too difficult to control. When Zero thought of what happened during the test drive, his stomach was churning and he almost vomited his lunch. This Zoffy can still be considered perfect, but as for the No. 0 armor, that was not even a semi-finished product and forced Zero to start from scratch. That was the real child that made Zero annoyed every time he thought about it. After finishing the test drive of the Zoffy armor, whose specific process was unknown, Zero held onto the wall and left the test site. He walked into the bathroom and vomited violently. It feels so uncomfortable. Zero, who was exhausted from vomiting, went to the armor storage room. There are already 5 armor cabins in this huge space, which are respectively filled with Zombie armor, Ultra armor, 7 armor, and the newly manufactured Jack armor and Ace armor. The Zombie armor can be temporarily sealed, as Zero doesn't want to see it again in the short term. The Ultra armor is very versatile, and the 7 armor has excellent close combat capabilities. As for the new Jack armor and Ace armor, there are many things to say. The Jack armor is 3 meters long and weighs 7.1 tons. It is the largest armor at present. The overall paint is somewhat similar to that of the Ultra armor, but it will be more complicated. It is equipped with a transmission system that cooperates with ultra telekinesis, getting rid of the shortcomings of using the transformer to locate the armor, and there is also a defensive force field that also cooperates with ultra telekinesis. Due to its large size, Zero stuffed several particle storage tanks inside it, so that even if Zero leaves, Oyo can use it instead. In terms of weapons, in addition to the upgraded Synopsis series of light weapons based on the Ultra Armor's Specium Ray, Specium Light Slash, and Specium Light Blade, it is also equipped with electromagnetic piercing spears, electromagnetic swords, electromagnetic punches, electromagnetic darts, and electromagnetic whips. It is the armor with the most diverse weapons among all armors so far. The Ace armor is slightly simpler. The Ace armor is 2 meters high and weighs only 200 kilograms. It is directly at the opposite end of the spectrum from Jack, and the weapons are also at the opposite end. Jello installed particle generators on the head, hands, chest, and legs of the Ace armor, and even the energy core can emit particles, which can perform quite a variety of light skills. Moreover, the cutting power of the Michelin beam used in its energy core is quite strong, and even Jello is afraid that he will accidentally take away his life, so he added a killing lock that he can only unlock under certain circumstances. There is no telekinesis transmission system, but a pair of rings are used as transformers. Chapter Conspiracy. In the ultralight, Zero really wanted to wear 2 sets of armor and fly around, but now there was no chance, so he could only try them on in the test field. I'm waiting for the day when we fight side by side, Jack, Ace. Zero looked at the 2 sets of armor, his eyes full of expectation. But now, Zero still had to wait in the ultralight until all the radiation on his body was eliminated before he could leave. As for Superman, he has the ability of biological force field, which can piss off most physicists in the world, so he doesn't have to worry about being entangled with radiation. After looking at the 2 sets of armor, Zero went to the rest cabin. Zero, who hadn't rested for 2 days, planned to sleep until the end of the holiday. At the same time, in an unknown corner of Metropolis, Atomic Skull slowly opened his eyes. In a daze, he felt as if he was locked in a coffin and couldn't move around in a large area. Where am I? Atomic Skull said puzzledly. Da-da-da-da. A sound similar to high heels stepping on the ground sounded in his ears, and a somewhat familiar voice sounded in the ears of Atomic Skull. Oh, my poor Mr. Albert. Alyssa, wearing a solemn black dress, appeared in the room. Just as the Atomic Skull was muttering in his heart that he was not dead yet, the coffin that locked him up suddenly stood up. When the coffin stood up, the part in front of the Atomic Skull's eyes turned into transparent glass, which allowed him to see Alyssa's figure. Where am I and what's going on? Atomic Skull asked anxiously. This is a very safe place, Mr. Albert. Alyssa rubbed her slightly red and swollen eyes and said in a crying voice, but because Dr. Cheston and Mr. Simon Pons died in the explosion, no one can perform the next stage of surgery for you, so I took the initiative to put you in this maintenance machine. Mr. Simon Pons, the Atomic Skull lowered his head and thought of that night. Several fragments and scenes flashed through his mind, Ultraman holding a long knife, the ruins of the explosion, the charred corpse, a series of pictures connected into one thing. I want you to pay for the lives of Mr. Simon Pons and Cheston. Ultraman. The Atomic Skull roared out of controlling the maintenance machine. Seeing this, Alyssa thought to herself, it seems that the hypnosis and suggestion I used during the days when he was unconscious really didn't work in vain. Looking at the Atomic Skull going crazy in the maintenance machine, Alyssa felt that it was a bit noisy, but she still patiently persuaded the Atomic Skull. Mr. Albert, I feel ashamed that I can only let you stay in this narrow machine. Alyssa suppressed her tears and said to the Atomic Skull, but I know someone who can help you. That person is Mr. Simon Pons' partner. He must be able to help you. Mr. Simon's partner? After hearing this, the Atomic Skull suddenly became less violent. Yes, and he also wants to see you now. Alyssa continued to guide the Atomic Skull. Then can I see him? The Atomic Skull said what Alyssa wanted him to say. Yes, but it will take time. Alyssa replied. Time is not a problem. I can stay in this maintenance machine for a long time. Atomic Skull agreed. Then I will go and ask him. Please wait for a moment. After saying this, Alyssa walked out of the room in a faint manner. It seems that he has believed what you said. A mechanical synthesized voice sounded in the dark. Yes, the plan can proceed to the next step. Alyssa said respectfully. The figure of Metal Man John Coburn walked out of the darkness. He had a smile on his imitation skin, which looked quite creepy. In order not to arouse the suspicion of Atomic Skull, Metal Man and Alyssa waited for several hours before returning to the room. I guess you are Mr. Albert, that Mr. Simon mentioned. The Metal Man pretended to be very friendly when he came up. Seeing the savior who finally appeared, Atomic Skull couldn't wait to ask, "Excuse me, is there any way you can save me? I'm sorry, we can't completely restore your appearance." The Metal Man poured a basin of cold water on Atomic Skull at first, making Atomic Skull lose hope, and then continued. "But I can make you a special restraint suit so that you can leave this life support machine, how about it?" "Sure. No problem at all." Atomic Skull agreed immediately, as if afraid that the Metal Man would go back on his word, "as long as I can move freely and take revenge on the Ultraman who took away Mr. Simon." "Do you want revenge too?" the Metal Man asked, staring at the Atomic Skull. Atomic Skull was a little unsure of what his benefactor wanted to say for a moment, but then he saw with his own eyes that the Metal Man tore off his face and saw with his own eyes the skeleton made entirely of metal. "Oh my God!" Amid the exclamation of the Atomic Skull, the Metal Man began to answer, "I also have the goal of revenge. Cooperate with me and we will take off the heads of those guys who think they're superior." "No problem at all." The Atomic Skull agreed without hesitation. Little did he know that he had fallen into a den of thieves, being sold and counting money for others. 4 days later, Jello's vacation finally ended. At this time, Jello's forehead had grown a new hair, and it was thicker than before. The only drawback was that it was still very short, and it looked no different from a buzz cut. After the vacation, he had to go to school, so Jello came to school with his school bag on his back, ready to spend an ordinary Monday. Before the first class started, Jello was sitting in his seat and felt a little bored. At this time, Lena sat next to him and said casually, "Are you finally cured? You must have been seriously ill after resting for 2 weeks. How do you know I'm sick?" Jello looked at Lena suspiciously, always having a bad premonition in his heart. "I asked around." Lena smiled lightly. Jello was a little unhappy to hear this, so he warned, "Don't ask about my affairs in the future." "Then I apologize for this matter." Lena still had that iconic smile on her face, and said casually, "There have been quite a lot of changes in the 2 weeks you were away. Even the school janitors have been replaced by many people. Did the previous janitor's contract expire?" Jello was a little confused. Janitors seem to be semi-lifetime jobs, and they won't be fired if they don't make big mistakes. At this time, Jello's super hearing captured a lot of neat footsteps. "It will be recommended tomorrow, and then I will try it out for 2 days and 3 chapters. During this period, I will add 1 chapter for every 2,000 points of reward, and the maximum is 10 chapters. I don't dare to set a too high goal for myself, so I'll give it a try first. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Zen came and went up, came and fell down, 1/3. Jello was a little confused when he heard the footsteps. Even the footsteps of the school football team were probably not so neat. The next moment, the door of the classroom was suddenly kicked open, and several guys in tactical uniforms suddenly broke in. For a moment, the whole school was full of these guys in tactical uniforms. They were all fully armed and held all the students in the school hostage in a very short time. "Everyone, hold your head and lie down." The kidnapper shouted to the people in the classroom to squat down. Jello, who didn't want to expose his identity, squatted down with the others. At the same time, he was also wondering who gave the robbers the right to kidnap in the metropolis and directly kidnap a school. It was really too courageous. "Get out." The robber took the butt of the gun and hit a student. The student didn't dare to anger the robber and walked on the ground rationally. Others followed the student out. Lena looked at Jello and saw that he had already moved. Driven by the robbers, Jello and Lena were driven to the school gymnasium by the robbers and squatted on the ground with other students and teachers. After counting the number of people, the captain of the robbers also reported to their superiors. The first step of the plan has been completed, and it's over. Well done, now let's start the second stage. The person on the other end of the communicator responded. Understood. After receiving the order, the captain of the robbers made a specific gesture to several of his men, and several of them immediately disappeared into the gymnasium. At the same time, Superman was suspended above Oak Tree High School, and his eyes were extremely cold when he looked at the gymnasium. The strong wind blew Superman's cape, and he folded his arms, opened his perspective eyes to the maximum, and took in the whole school. Outside Oak Tree High School were already full of police and reporters, and everyone wanted to know what happened inside the school. What a courage! Superman memorized the physiological data of the robbers, and then gathered enough strength, and swooped down from the sky, and several white sonic boom rings appeared behind him. Boom! The whole process took less than a second, and Superman broke through the roof of the gymnasium and landed in the gymnasium, and a robber shouted hurriedly, "It's Superman!" Hearing this, several robbers immediately turned their guns according to the instructions in the plan. However, their target was not Superman, but a group of powerless students and teachers. The desperate gang pulled the trigger without hesitation, and the bullet flew through the barrel and flew towards the students. Seeing this scene, Superman was angry. These bullets that could fly at a speed of 1,000 meters per second were like snails in Superman's eyes. Before these bullets flew a short distance, they were all caught by Superman. After catching the bullets, Superman's eyes turned red, and two heat visions shot out, burning all the kidnappers' gun barrels red in 0.1 seconds. Bang bang, several muffled sounds rang out, and the kidnappers were instantly blown to the ground by the exploding gun barrels. Superman solved this incident. Superman. Give me an autograph. Superman. You are my idol. Some people began to cheer, as if there was no danger just now. Superman descended among the crowd and was about to calm the students down when a familiar voice suddenly sounded. Superman, the superhero of Metropolis, the god who descended to the world, your unparalleled power is really enviable. The familiar voice of Superman echoed in the gymnasium, and the students who were cheering around Superman immediately stopped talking. Metal Man. Did you plan this kidnapping? Superman stared at the surroundings vigilantly. After hearing the voice of the Metal Man, Jello also quietly retreated and sent a message to Superman with Ultraman's telekinesis. Delay a little, brother, let me deal with the Metal Man. Remember not to reveal your identity. Superman also reminded Jello. While everyone was attracted by the conversation between the Metal Man and Superman, Jello took this opportunity to sneak out. Although the door of the gymnasium was locked and the noise would definitely be loud, there was still a toilet available. However, Jello's move was noticed by Lena. She saw Jello sneak away with her own eyes, but she did not speak up. It seems to be the same as what my brother said. These rural guys with the surname Kent all have their own little secrets. Lena has already remembered the development of the next event. Otherwise, how can I lead out the heroes of Metropolis? The Metal Man, who was hiding somewhere, used the loudspeaker to talk to Superman. This is a grudge between you and me. Superman said seriously, don't involve these children. Don't involve these children. That's funny. The Metal Man's voice became playful, and then became extremely arrogant. There is a person in this group who is related to the person I hate the second most. In an instant, all the students looked at each other, but they didn't know who the Metal Man was talking about. Only Superman knew who the Metal Man hated the second most, Lex Luthor. It was Lex who planned the transformation of the Metal Man into this appearance. The next second, a shadow passed under everyone's feet, and then came behind Lena, and strangled Lena with lightning speed. Alyssa, wearing a tight combat uniform, put a knife on Lena's neck and warned Superman. Don't move, Superman. Superman, who saw Lena being captured, was a little angry. He didn't care about being targeted, but he didn't allow innocent people to be involved. Superman's eyes became hot again, and he wanted to knock down Alyssa in one move to save Lena. At the same time, the whole gymnasium turned red. Everyone looked up and saw that the light bulb that originally emitted gentle white light turned into a light tube that emitted strange red light. Do you like this gift, Superman? Metal Man said proudly. Green kryptonite can hurt Superman, while red solar radiation can slowly suppress Superman's superpowers. It is one of the means used by many villains to deal with Superman. After being exposed to the red sun, Superman's power began to disappear, but he was still a long way from turning back into an ordinary person. You're irritating me, Metal Man. Superman gathered his strength and prepared to solve this matter before his ability was suppressed. Really? That's not necessarily true. Instantly, a purple and a green energy beam were fired from above and below the ground respectively, and hit Superman at the same time. Ah! Superman screamed after being hit by the purple and green beams, and the atomic skull fell from above, while the metal man crawled out from the ground. Chapter Armor Show, 2/3 Metropolis. In the gymnasium of Oak Tree High School, the figures of Metal Man and Atomic Skull slowly appeared in front of Superman. Superman was in great pain after being hit by kryptonite rays and atomic rays at the same time. Moreover, the lights in the gymnasium were replaced with red solar rays, which made Superman's situation even worse. How is it, Superman? Is it still as bad as before? Metal Man stood up and challenged. The pair of green electronic eyes saw the wounds on Superman's body that had not yet completely healed, and he said proudly, "Look at you, Superman, you have become extremely weak now. Call out that bastard called Ultraman." Next to Metal Man, Atomic Skull, who was wearing a straitjacket, was also roaring at Superman. Superman took a look at Atomic Skull and felt that Atomic Skull's straitjacket did not look like a product of Earth. But it was precisely because of this alien straitjacket that Atomic Skull's atomic energy would not leak out, causing everyone present to die on the spot due to nuclear radiation. Superman glanced at him and said tiredly, "Maybe he is behind you." "What?" Atomic Skull turned his head in confusion, only to see that Zero had appeared behind Atomic Skull wearing a summer. Then a heavy punch hit Atomic Skull's face, and the heavy fist knocked Atomic Skull flying backwards. "Changed to a new armor again?" The Metal Man looked at Zero with some hesitation. "Is the speed of technological update a little too fast? Don't move, or I will kill her." Seeing Zero suddenly appear and knock down Atomic Skull, Alyssa hurriedly warned him. After seeing this scene, Zero also stopped his action for a while. After all, the other party had a hostage, and he couldn't act rashly. "She's right, Ultraman." The Metal Man also turned his arm into a hand cannon, and the green kryptonite energy condensed in it. The target was Superman. Taking advantage of the hostage in his hand, the Metal Man warned, "Otherwise, your big friend will get hurt." Seeing this, Superman looked up at Zero and said that the Metal Man could not kill him, and it was important to save Lina now. Zero was immediately in a dilemma, and the Atomic Skull took the opportunity to send an energy beam to Zero, but Zero dodged it. After seeing Ultraman stop, Lina felt a little guilty. If she had not been taken hostage, Ultraman and Superman might have ended the battle. But, Lina is not an ordinary person, she is from the Luthor family. The Luthor family has never been a little lamb, but a poisonous scorpion that stings anyone who touches them. Lina struggled to touch her bracelet, and then gently scratched it, and the bracelet immediately released an electric current to hit Alyssa, giving Alyssa an electric therapy on the spot. Seeing this, Zero raised his left hand, and the metalium particles condensed into an ultra-disc blade in his hand, and threw it towards Alyssa. Seeing the extremely sharp disc blade flying towards her, Alyssa quickly hid behind Lina, wanting to use a despicable shield. But she ignored that Zero had ultra-telekinesis. The disc blade drew an arc and accurately chopped on Alyssa's shoulder, cutting off her right hand on the spot. The strange purple blood even splashed on Lina. "Alien?" Lina looked at the blood on her body in confusion. The next moment, Zero used telekinesis to wrap his whole body to form a telekinetic field, and then flew at full speed, and arrived at Lina's side in the blink of an eye. Looking at Alyssa with purple blood flowing in front of him, a cold light flashed across the optical eyepiece of the ace armor, and then a blue laser shot out from the particle generator on the forehead, instantly repelling Alyssa. Alyssa, who was hit by the impact laser, kept flying backwards, and finally fell into the wall, and her life or death was unknown. "Don't move, Ultraman. Don't forget that I have more hostages." The Metal Man was shocked to see that Alyssa was killed so quickly, but the adult's request still had to be completed. Jello signaled Lina to stay as far away as possible, then looked at the Metal Man and questioned, "Is this all you can do, Metal Man? Are you trying to provoke me?" The Metal Man said with disdain, "No, I'm just stating the facts." Jello looked at the Metal Man with a look of neither sadness nor joy, and the atomic skeleton seemed to be unable to control his anger and flew towards Jello. "I want you to die, Ultraman." In the hands of the atomic skeleton, purple atomic energy continued to condense, and finally turned into a beam of light as thick as a bowl and attacked Jello. Jello noticed that although this atomic beam was much thinner, its destructive power was much stronger than the last time. So Jello opened his hands, and the metalium particles formed a rectangular shield to block the atomic beam of the atomic skeleton. After blocking the beam of the atomic skull, Jello withdrew his right hand, and then continuously fired light bullets from his palm to contain the atomic skull. After being hit by several light bullets in a row, the atomic skull barely came to his senses, but at this time Jello had already arrived in front of him and repelled the atomic skull with a shock laser. "It seems that you are not willing to accept my toast." The metal man raised his hand cannon towards the students and fired it without hesitation. The green energy bullet flew towards the students. With the power of this energy bullet, it could kill all the students in one move. Boom! Although a violent explosion sounded, the scene that the metal man expected did not happen. In the smoke and dust produced by the explosion, a towering figure stood in front of all the hostages. The metal man looked through the smoke and dust of the explosion and wondered, "Who is it?" ... The figure in the smoke and dust did not answer the metal man. He just silently raised his wrists, revealing two black gum barrels. Blue arcs appeared from the gum barrels, and then two electromagnetic balls flew out of the gum barrels and flew towards the metal man. The metal man quickly turned his arms into sharp blades, and after two swish cuts, the two electromagnetic balls were cut into pieces by the metal man. The figure in the smoke took a step forward and appeared in front of the metal man. The second Ultraman. The metal man was very confused about what was going on. Wasn't the real Ultraman fighting the atomic skull? How could he appear here? The one who appeared in front of the metal man was actually Onoya. Due to its size, the Jack armor can be built with more particle storage tanks, so even ordinary people or artificial intelligence can use this armor. However, there are far more than Onoya using the Jack armor. A large motorcycle smashed the wall of the gymnasium like a cannonball, and after opening a way out for everyone, it transformed into a robot. I forgot to mention the first recommendation. After a friend request did it, I found out that during the recommendation period, monthly tickets are also counted as extra chapters. Accumulated 20 tickets will add one chapter, share the upper limit of 10 chapters with rewards. Now I have accumulated 4 tickets. Come on, brothers. Zangwa Dame, 3/3 Metropolis Oak Tree High School. Dame is not just a simple large motorcycle. As early as the beginning of its design, Jello added a transformation design to it, allowing it to become an auxiliary robot at a critical moment. After entering the battlefield, Dame quickly locked onto the red sun tubes, and the spacium weapons on his wrists fired quickly. After a few shots, all the red sun tubes were eliminated. Metal Man. After the red sun rays disappeared, Superman felt that he had regained some strength. He roared, then swung his fist, drew a not-so-beautiful arc, and hit the metal man with all his strength. This punch seemed to tear apart the space, carrying a great force that could smash through a mountain, and was bound to destroy the metal man. At the moment of being hit, the metal man's system instantly began to report a large number of errors. Warning. Power offline. Outer armor damaged by 75%. Warning. Consciousness transmission system offline. Warning. Kryptonite energy system offline by 64%. Repair time. 5 minutes. A bunch of red frames suddenly appeared in the metal man's sight, and the metal man's mood fell to the bottom in an instant. The metal man, feeling cold in his heart, said that this was impossible. Impossible, my material has been changed to a metal that has never existed on the earth, and it can even allow me to walk in the deepest trench on the earth. Electric sparks kept coming out of the metal man, who fell to the ground, and even one of his electronic eyes fell off. I'm not the same as I was before, Metal Man. Superman stared at the metal man, leaned down slightly, and then rushed to push the metal man away and took him to an altitude of 10,000 meters. In the gymnasium of Oak Tree High School, Jello was still fighting with the atomic skull. After Superman took the metal man away from the battlefield, Jello also ordered Oya and Dame, evacuate the crowd quickly. Oya, Dame. Understood. Oya and Dame said that they understood and began to evacuate the kidnapped students, while Jello continued to fight with the atomic skull. Facing the atomic skeleton's almost random punches, Zero, wearing ace armor, stepped forward and controlled him with a joint skill, and shouted, "Don't you know that you're being used? The skeleton gang didn't want to kill you at all, they just want to turn you into a monster." I don't believe it. The atomic skeleton remembered what Simon Pons had said in his ear, and his hands immediately fired a large amount of atomic energy to force Zero back, and then shouted, "It was Mr. Simon who cured my terminal illness. And you killed him. Look at what you look like now. If he really wanted to save you, would he turn you into what you look like now?" Zero frowned and cursed. Years of illness have made the atomic skeleton lose a lot of judgment ability. In his eyes, as long as he is no longer troubled by pain, everything will be fine. No. I don't believe it. The atomic skeleton shouted, and the atomic energy in his body became unstable again. Seeing this, Zero glanced at Oya, who had evacuated everyone, and shouted, "Oya, give me the jackhammer." Understood. Oya, who was using the jackhammer, received the order and immediately teleported the ace armor on Zero's body, and controlled the jackhammer to fly towards Zero. Zero, who had taken off the ace armor, flashed in front of the jackhammer, and the jackhammer also opened, allowing Zero to get in. With the click sound of the armor joint, Zero successfully put on the jackhammer, and the ace armor returned to the ultralight. After putting on the heavy jackhammer, Zero's first feeling was that it was very heavy, and various weapon readings soon appeared in the optical eyepiece in front of him. Zero raised his hands, and two physical electromagnetic swords popped out. Electric current flashed on the folded blades, which looked extremely sharp. Second round, Atomic Skull. After locking the Atomic Skull, Zero, wearing the jackhammer, ran towards the Atomic Skull. The jackhammer weighed 7.1 tons and was 3 meters tall. It was like a moving hill when it rushed. Atomic Skull trembled in his heart and raised his wrists again to fire atomic energy beams. The atomic energy beam hit jackhammer's chest armor squarely, and wisps of black smoke came out. But it was just black smoke. Seeing this, Atomic Skull increased his energy output like crazy, but his atomic energy beam was like a hammer hitting a non-Newtonian fluid, and it couldn't cause any damage at all. How is it possible? Amid the Atomic Skull's exclamation, Zero grabbed the Atomic Skull and held the Atomic Skull's ankles tightly with his sturdy arms. Then there was a violent left and right smash. Atomic Skull was smashed by Zero like a hammer, and even the ground of the gymnasium was smashed into a lot of big holes. Boom! After Zero adjusted the armor output to the highest level, the Atomic Skull smashed a large pit with a radius of more than 10 meters on the ground. The violent vibration even caused the seats in the surrounding audience seats to explode. Looking around, the entire stadium has begun to crumble. The Atomic Skull fell into the pit, and the purple flame on the skull began to flicker again. Can you talk properly now? Zero looked at the Atomic Skull coldly and said. When Zero told the Atomic Skull the truth, Superman was interrogating the Metal Man in the sky. Who is supporting you behind the scenes, Metal Man? Ha 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 ha, Superman, you fool. The Metal Man knew that Superman would not kill him before asking the truth, so he began to commit suicide crazily. You alien bastard, don't you know what kind of existence is targeting you? That adult will take away the person who is most important to you and turn him into the most ruthless warrior. Listening to the Metal Man's tone full of ridicule and contempt, Superman's mind instantly flashed through all his relatives. The only one who met the conditions described by the Metal Man was Zero. Not good. Hearing this, Superman immediately pulled back. No, it's too late, you can't save him. The Metal Man's electronic eyes were full of madness, and the green kryptonite in his chest was constantly being drained of energy. The dazzling green light even broke through the Metal Man's outer armor. When I was thrown out of the Earth Bayou, I met that adult. He transformed me and took me to your hometown. He installed the largest kryptonite in me. This time when I returned to Earth, I never thought about living. Even if I can't kill you, I will leave you at the greatest pain. The Metal Man's crazy words echoed in Superman's ears. The energy of the green kryptonite was completely extracted by the Metal Man. Then, accompanied by a violent explosion, a green explosion cloud appeared in the sky at an altitude of 10,000 meters. Another 9 monthly tickets or another 900 starting coins can add more chapters. Come on, brothers, don't let the author stop. Metropolis Oak Tree High School. In the crumbling gymnasium, after a lot of earnest persuasion, Jello finally made Atomic Skull understand that he was being used. After letting go of his fighting spirit, Atomic Skull covered his face and lamented, "What on earth did I do?" Looking at Atomic Skull, who began to confess, Jello felt very calm. With Atomic Skull's ability, if he continued to stay here, he might be caught by the Eye Society and put in the Suicide Squad. But the Eye Society was not a good thing either. Maybe it would be more appropriate for Superman to lock him up in the Phantom Zone, Jello thought secretly. Run away, run. Run. Jello. Run. Suddenly, Superman's voice appeared in Jello's ears, but compared to usual, Superman's voice sounded very weak. Jello immediately realized that something was wrong, and at this moment, Atomic Skull suddenly wailed again. Ah! It hurts. There's something wrong with this suit. Atomic Skull suddenly rolled on the ground in pain. Jello looked closely and found that several alien characters were lit up on the straitjacket on the atomic skull, all of which were characters that Jello did not recognize. However, change to waist armor for me, quickly. Jello realized that something was wrong, and while retreating quickly, he asked Oyo to change him into the fastest ace armor. I am transmitting the ace armor at the fastest speed. Hearing Jello's anxiety, Oyo also transmitted the ace armor at the fastest speed. After putting on the ace armor, Jello directly pulled the flight system to the maximum value, and several sonic boom rings instantly appeared behind him. But it was too late. The energy at the atomic skull was frantically extracted by the straitjacket on his body, and a purple ball of light also appeared in front of him. As soon as this purple ball of light appeared, it showed an extremely terrifying traction. Even Jello, who was flying at full speed enough to break through Mach 3, was constantly retreating under the pull of this suction. Remove the restriction. Seeing that he could not escape the traction of the purple ball of light, Jello no longer held back and directly lifted the restriction. The particles in his body and the armor rushed to the jet port without any care. The armor shot out a surging blue propulsion flame, carrying Jello to resist the traction. Jello, who was pulled by the purple light ball, felt that his body was about to be torn apart, but he continued to speed up. After the restrictions were lifted, the ace armor showed an impressive speed, and successfully allowed Jello to gradually move away from the purple light ball. But just when Jello was about to escape the traction, a big hand stretched out from the purple light ball and directly grabbed Jello's ankle. What? Jello was shocked and accelerated again, but the strange hand was extremely powerful. No matter how Jello struggled, the hand could hold Jello firmly. A scarlet eye flashed in the purple light ball, looking at Jello's figure with satisfaction, and then increased the strength in his hand, allowing Jello to get closer to the purple light ball. At this time, Jello's half-body was almost trapped in the purple light ball, and the situation was precarious. At this moment, a red meteor streaked across the sky and approached Jello. It was Superman. Superman looked very weak, and it seemed that he had not completely recovered from the kryptonite explosion just now, but he still tried his best to come to Jello's side. Clerk! Jello shouted happily, and he stretched out his hand with all his strength, trying to grab Superman's hand. Superman also stretched out his hand to hold Jello. But the mysterious man behind that purple light ball didn't want to see that scene happen. He increased the strength in his hand and suddenly grabbed Jello into the purple light ball. In this way, Superman watched Jello being captured by the mysterious man behind that purple light ball in front of him, but he couldn't even catch Jello. No! Superman shouted in grief. After catching Jello, the purple light ball also began to shrink suddenly, and then produced violent fluctuations. With an explosion that shook the entire metropolis, the entire stadium was enveloped by the explosion. People outside the stadium didn't know what happened yet. Lois Lane, who hurried to report, watched the scene and felt very bad. When the explosion dissipated, Lois Lane ignored the rescue workers' dissuasion and rushed directly into the ruins. The ruins were still a little hot, and there was a pungent smell around, but this made Lois more determined to move forward. In the center of the ruins, Lois saw Superman. Superman knelt in the center of the ruins, as if all his strength had been drained away. His hands fell weakly on both sides of his body, his compact uniform was covered with dust, one of his hands was holding a pair of dirty glasses, and even the most dazzlingest logo in the past was covered with a layer of dust. Seeing this, Lois hurried to Superman's side and asked him worriedly, "Superman, what happened here?" "I lost him," Superman said in a lost state. He lowered his head, as if he had become a different person. The usually proud god of the world was like a powerless child at this moment, and he was almost destroyed by the pain of seeing his brother leave. Looking at the lost Superman in front of her, Lois combined the course of events and roughly guessed something. Did Ultraman die in that explosion? Lois made a bold guess. Knowing that Ultraman was an important existence to Superman, Lois realized that Superman must be feeling bad now, so she wanted to comfort Superman, but Superman stood up before Lois could speak. But compared to his usual bravery and invincibility, Superman looked so tired at this time. "Superman," Lois shouted worriedly. "Don't worry." Superman looked back at Lois and squeezed out a reluctant smile. "I just want to find a place to be quiet, I'm fine." But the more Superman said this, the more worried Lois became, but she couldn't stop Superman, she could only watch Superman fly away with her own eyes. Looking at Superman's figure, Lois knew that she couldn't enlighten Superman by herself, she needed some friends. After thinking of this, Lois took out the communicator with the bad logo from her pocket. "I hope that guy can help a little." Thinking of this, Lois sent a message to the big bat. On the other side, on the top floor of Lex's building, Borderline was looking into the distance with his hands behind his back. Behind him was Lena, who was taken away as soon as she was out of danger. It seems that our Boy Scout No. 2 has temporarily left, Lex said with some emotion. Temporarily left? Lena was puzzled. What does this mean? The core energy of the explosion just now is enough to kill him. Lena. Lex turned around, looked at his dear sister, and said solemnly, there are things in this world that you can't understand. Some people may appear in front of you again even if you see them buried with your own eyes. ... For updates today, and more updates will be added with 16 more monthly tickets or 1,600 Kidian coins. There is another thing. Everyone may think that some of the monsters in the Metropolis chapter are supermodels. Here the author has to say, this is Metropolis. As a city protected by Superman, who can stay in Metropolis without some villain skills? Moreover, even if there are no major events, the residents of Metropolis will often see terrifying characters like Apocalypse and Kryptonians who can destroy the world when they fight. Coupled with the setting that Earth is the most dangerous place, Metropolis has become as dangerous as Gotham in a sense. Therefore, some villains in the Warworld chapter may make readers feel very weak, but don't worry, because that is because Zero has beaten the Hell Dungeon Metropolis, although he didn't clear it. Chapter World's Best Partner, 2/3 Gotham today. Gotham was as gloomy as usual. With the heavy rain, the whole city was washed by the rainstorm, but the thing lingering over the city would never be washed away. Boom in the distance, a lightning snake streaked across the sky, and with a loud noise, it temporarily illuminated an alley. The alley washed by the rain was not enough to be described as dirty and messy. Dozens of Riddler's men were lying on the ground and wailing. Fear had been branded in the minds of this gang of thugs. In the middle of this group of Riddler's men, there was a figure wrapped in a cloak and covered in black. Remember, I'm always watching you. The deep voice lingered in the hearts of Riddler's men like a nightmare, and when they came to their senses, the figure had disappeared in the alley. After walking through Gotham, which was full of sin, the figure returned to his base, a cave full of bads. The old butler Alfred Pennyworth, who had been standing by the side for a long time, had been waiting for him at the parking lot. The weathered old man still looked very energetic. Good night, Master Wayne. It seems that your operation today went smoothly. Alfred came behind Batman, who walked out of the Batmobile and personally took off his cape for him. The Bat has always been a place that humans cannot defend in time, especially Batman, who has suffered terrible injuries to his back. It is even more dangerous. Now in the entire Batcave, only the old butler Alfred can be trusted so much. It's just that the Riddler's men were defeated. The Riddler may have run out of Gotham. Batman's heavy voice sounded in the Batcave. He took off his helmet, sat directly in front of the Batcomputer, and browsed the existing intelligence. A lot of information flashed before his eyes, and Alfred said to Batman at this time, Master, Miss Lois called a few hours ago. Lois Lane. Batman, who was collecting information, stopped his action, turned to look at Alfred, and asked, Is Clark in trouble? It's not Superman who is in trouble, Master. Alfred shook his head and said carefully, It's Superman's follower Ultraman. I know that kid who likes to give himself powerful nicknames. Clark told me about him. Batman leaned his majestic body on a chair, crossed his hands, and asked, What's wrong with him? From the existing data, there are not many people on Earth who can hurt him, Alfred. At this point, Alfred was also a little hesitant. He considered the wording a little to avoid touching on the thing that Batman was most reluctant to mention. That kid, he disappeared in an explosion today. Hearing this, Batman's blue eyes suddenly flashed with a painful look, which was a shadow that he would never get rid of. The poor child lost body temperature in his arms, and before the child completely passed away, he suffered torture that ordinary people could not imagine. Swish! Alfred saw Batman stand up from the chair, put on his helmet and cape again, and then walked towards the Batfighter. I will inform Lucius to arrange a trip to Metropolis for you. Even without words, Alfred knew what he should do. In a moment, Batman sat in the Batfighter. He looked at the various readings on the electronic screen, his eyes calm but with a hint of anxiety. Clark, I know this kind of pain, I will rush to your side, right away. Then, the top of the Batcave opened, revealing the night sky with heavy rain, and raindrops hit the Batfighter. Batman ignited the engine, the fighter took off, and then disappeared into the night sky. Metropolis. Due to the battle during the day, Oak Tree High School has become a ruin. Although there are no casualties, it will take at least several months to resume teaching. The area around Oak Tree High School has been marked with various warning signs, but this cannot hinder Batman, the world's greatest detective. The night breeze blew his cape, and Batman stood where Jello disappeared. He took out the scanner from the tactical belt around his waist and swept it in the air. All the readings obtained by the scanner were transmitted to Batman's helmet. Looking at those strange readings, Batman frowned. "Alfred, what data did the Bat computer get?" "Master, there is no such reading on Earth. It should be an alien who caused the explosion, but there is a kind of data related to what we have studied." Alfred's voice sounded in the headset, and then the data was transmitted to Batman. Seeing that the data that appeared in the helmet was very similar to the transmission technology he secretly studied, Batman also began to reason. Transmission technology? It seems that Ultraman is not dead, but was transported to an alien planet by this transmission technology. "I have to tell Superman about this," Alfred said, "but, Master, I have called Mr. Clark several times, but no one answered the phone." "Then go to his home to find him." Batman's eyes condensed, and he was ready to leave again. "I understand, Master, but I have already bought the headline." "Are you leaving so soon?" "Although I also guess that Mr. Perry has already written tomorrow's headline." Alfred's voice sounded in the headset. "Then let him write Millionaire visits Metropolis at night and donates to damaged schools." After that, Batman set off again. The Bat Fighter is the crystallization of human wisdom at present, enough to leave the top fighter jets of various countries behind. Batman arrived at the North Pole under the acceleration without caring about G-force. The cold wind could not shake Batman. He stood in front of the gate of the Fortress of Solitude and raised his head and shouted, "Clark, I want to see you." Boom boom. Then, the gate of the Fortress of Solitude slowly opened, and Batman slowly walked in. In a room at the deepest part, Batman saw Superman. Superman now looked like he had lost all his strength. He curled up in a corner, as if he had experienced the worst day. "Bruce, I lost him. I don't even know how to explain to my parents. I am a complete loser." Superman looked at Batman with lifeless eyes, and then spoke in self-destruction. Looking at the decadent Superman, Bruce walked up to him and yelled, "Clark, cheer up. Ultraman didn't die in the explosion. You have a chance to bring him back." "What?" After hearing this, Superman's eyes suddenly lit up. "Only 6 more monthly tickets are needed to update another chapter." Zmeng, 3/3 Fortress of Solitude. After hearing what Batman said, Superman stood up immediately and regained his strength. "I found traces of alien technology at the core of the explosion," Batman said slowly. "It is a technology related to teleportation. I guess an alien has taken a fancy to your Ultraman's power and wants to take it for himself. Of course, it may also be that the Earthlings use technology, but in short, Ultraman is not dead." Listening to Batman's words, Superman suddenly felt that he had hope. He forced a smile and said to Batman, "At least there is hope, Bruce." "Yes, Clark, you still have a chance to bring him back." Batman smiled for the first time in a long time. "You're right, Bruce." Superman cheered up again. "I will bring him back, even if I have to go to the edge of the universe." "Hurry up, Clark, and don't be so emotional in the future. You can actually discover all this without my reminder," Batman reminded Superman. "I understand, Bruce, but he is my only brother. I was really 2, but now the most important thing is to bring him back." Superman held his forehead with regret and said ashamedly, "It's not too late, come on." At the same time, in an unknown place, Jello opened his eyes in a daze. He subconsciously moved his limbs, but found that his limbs were tightly locked by iron chains, and the range of movement was very limited. "Where is this?" Jello climbed up with difficulty, and the world was spinning in front of his eyes. He couldn't stand up straight. He found that he was still wearing the ace armor, so he tried to shout "Oi!" but there was no response. It seems that he has exceeded Oi's signal range. As the artificial intelligence of ultralight, Oi can provide most of the help to Jello in the Milky Way. If even Oi can't be contacted, it means that Jello is now outside the Milky Way. "You woke up." A voice that sounded very uncomfortable sounded in Jello's ears. Jello forced himself to calm down and then saw clearly who was standing in front of him. This was a tall figure, with a very strong body. One of his arms was almost as big as Jello's body. Jello felt that he would be as tall as him only if he put on the jack armor. The man's skin was earthy yellow, like an unwashed potato, and his eyes were scarlet. He was wearing an alien high-tech battlesuit, with an orange-gold diamond on his chest. On both sides of the orange-gold diamond, there were 2 tubes connecting the diamond. Jello's head seemed to be a mess and he couldn't remember who this was, so he asked, "Who are you?" "My name is Mongo." The giant figure spoke, "I brought you here from Earth." "What do you want to do?" Jello asked subconsciously. "Even in the war world, I have never seen a magical life like you." Mongo looked at Jello in armor and said, "Although you need external armor to exert your power, you are also a very rare species. You should be able to bring bloody battles to you. You want me to fight for you?" Jello frowned and said. Listening to Mongo's words, Jello remembered some general things. Mongo, a cosmic overlord who likes to drive a giant mobile fortress warworld to roam the universe, his biggest hobby is to drive all kinds of aliens to perform gladiatorial shows for him. This man is insidious and cunning, and has many disgusting methods. It seems that he has a son and a daughter, and is one of the enemies of the Justice League that has not yet been formed. "You're right, kid." Mongo looked at Jello and laughed. "There have been no new people joining my arena for a long time, so I hired someone to kidnap you. Are you the mastermind behind all this? Are you the one who controlled the live wires and the parasites to attack the city square? Are you also the one who hired the Metal Man?" Jello clenched his fists, and the phantom particles in his body surged wildly, ready to turn into a deadly weapon at any time. "You're right, kid." Mongo smiled triumphantly, even clapping his hands happily. The pa sound was extremely harsh. "I gave a little gift to the guy who was thrown out of the solar system by Superman, and asked him to bring Superman to me. But after I found you, I changed my target. In other words, you took the blame for your big friend. You bastard." Jello roared and broke free from the chains. The Metalium light blades on his wrists released red, green and yellow light blades, which broke the chains in an instant. Even the chains on his feet broke in the first second that Jello jumped up. Jello rushed towards Mongo like a meteor, and the three-color Metalium light blades dragged a long light belt behind him. The orange-yellow optical eyepiece glowed, and even the energy core on his chest turned red, which meant that Jello had released the limiter. Just by moving, Jello set off a hurricane that was enough to blow away everything. Even an aircraft carrier would be destroyed by this blow. Ha ha ha, what a great power! Facing Jello, who used all his strength, Mongo's eyes were filled with excitement. He stretched out his left hand, slowly clenched his 5 fingers into a fist, and then punched Jello. Boom! A violent shockwave overturned everything around, and the stone wall made of unknown alien bricks and stones instantly exploded and turned into powder all over the sky. Even the 2 alien soldiers guarding the door were blown away by the shockwave for dozens of meters before falling to the ground. "It's really powerful. It's really powerful." Mongo laughed and increased the strength in his hand. The muscles on his arm bulged instantly, and the orange-gold diamond on his chest also burst into dazzling light. Only Jello, who was punching Mongo, could feel Mongo's terrible strange power, and Jello couldn't help but increase his strength to fight against Mongo. After Jello increased his strength, Mongo felt a little pressure, but this pressure did not give him a headache, but a huge joy. "I was right about your potential." Mongo roared, and an extremely terrifying force surged from his body, turning into the last straw that broke the camel's back for Jello. Boom! Under the terrifying force of Mongo, Jello flew backwards. In midair, Jello stopped his body forcibly, crossed his wrists, activated the particle generator, and a vertical white crescent-shaped light blade gathered in his hands, and then suddenly threw it towards Mongo. After seeing this crescent-shaped light blade, Mongo sensed the danger and dodged it very thrillingly, and said bluntly, "What a terrible weapon, even I will be injured by this light blade, right? Children can't hold such weapons, the game is over." Then, Mongo's figure disappeared from the spot, and there was only a cloud of smoke where he had stood before. Teleport. Jello dodged backwards suddenly. "It's just that your vision can't keep up." Mongo's voice rang in his ears, and Jello tried his best to fly, but Mongo's huge fist instantly hit Jello's stomach. With a bang, Ace's armor was instantly damaged. Starting from this chapter, Zero will leave Superman's protection and step into the cruel world of war. Only when he leaves the protection can Zero realize the need to become stronger. No one can help Zero here. Everything needs to be done by himself. The War World chapter. A grand series. There will be another update at 9 o'clock. If you want to read it, you can wait. Currently, there are 16 monthly tickets and 100 reward points. If you get another 3 monthly tickets or 300 reward points, another chapter will be updated today. Chapter War World, 4/3 monthly tickets accumulated 20 plus additional chapters. War World. This celestial fortress is covered with all kinds of high-tech weapons. It is difficult to find out who originally made War World. Most life forms in the universe believe that Mongo is the owner of this celestial fortress. After knocking Jello unconscious, Mongo summoned two guards of different races and dragged Jello to a large camp. Unlike the high-tech in the core of War World, this place is even more messy and worse than the worst slums on Blue Star. Today, this tent, which is only supported by a few pillars and a few racks, ushered in a new guest. Plop with a muffled sound, several aliens threw the unconscious Jello to the ground. All kinds of cosmic people around cast all kinds of eyes at Jello, some hostile, some pitiful, some lamenting, and even murderous. All the cosmic people here were captured by Mongo. There are quite a lot of races, and some of them go to participate in gladiatorial combat every day. The result is either life or death. Winning not only allows you to survive, but also gets better living conditions, which is what most gladiators think about. Looking at Zero, who had fainted on the ground, a one-eyed alien looked at the ace armor on him and became greedy. What a great armor. If I can wear it, I would definitely win, right? People's desires are like rolling stones on a mountain. Once they start, they can never stop. This sentence is also applicable in the universe. The greed in his heart became stronger and stronger. The one-eyed alien took out a poisoned dagger from his waist and held it with his backhand. The sharp blade was shining coldly, and the one-eyed alien suddenly rushed out of the crowd. There were several other aliens rushing out with the one-eyed alien. They had various reasons. They either wanted to kill their opponents or wanted to seize Zero's armor, but they had only one goal, to kill Zero. In the center of the storm, Zero did not react at all, as if he had not woken up yet. Daggers, hammers, fists, all kinds of weapons attacked Zero. Got it. The one-eyed alien shouted in the language of his race. He saw his dagger pierce Zero with his own eyes. The same thing happened to the other gladiators. They watched their weapons hit Jello with their own eyes. But, when their joy faded, they all found that their weapons seemed to be blocked by a thin barrier. What? Jello, who had not yet fully awakened, burst out with his telekinesis, and the invisible telekinesis spread out, instantly knocking away all the gladiators who surrounded and beat him. The gladiators flew back several meters away, and one by one they fell to the ground unconscious. The other gladiators looked at Jello in surprise. How could he have such power while still unconscious? The gladiators who were intimidated by Jello's power retreated one after another, leaving only a small number of gladiators still looking for opportunities to assassinate Jello. About 5 minutes later, Jello woke up from his coma. He shook his head with difficulty, and his mind was filled with the scene of himself being killed instantly by Mongo. Mongo can be a Superman opponent not only because he is good at conspiracy and trickery. Even if we look at the entire universe, Mongo's strength is among the best. In addition, the giant fortress War World that moves anytime and anywhere makes Mongo's danger level rise sharply. Facing such a strong enemy, it is understandable that Zero, who has just started out, is not a match. But this tragic defeat almost made Zero fall into a haze. If he wants to leave here, he must not avoid Mongo. If he can't beat Mongo, he can't escape from the War World. He must accumulate strength first, and then escape from here. Zero thought secretly. Zero stood up from the ground with difficulty, then started the system built into the armor and began to check the armor. Overall damage to the armor is 59%. The auxiliary system built into the armor is far less powerful than armor, but it is still easy to do simple things such as searching for enemies, scanning, self-checking. I can only say that it can barely fight. Looking at the damage level of Ace's armor as high as 59%, Zero frowned immediately. This was too bad. Now, besides a broken armor, he only had the gravity watch Claire gave him, and he didn't know where his camouflage glasses were. Can anyone tell me where this is? Looking at the aliens in front of him looking at each other in bewilderment, Jello knew that English was not a universal language in this universe. For some aliens, that sentence might be a provocation. An alien with lizard-like features rushed up. Jello turned sideways, then restrained the alien gladiator's shoulder with his right hand, and then exerted force to crush the alien gladiator's shoulder blade. Gila-la-la. The alien gladiator let out a sharp wail, and a forked tongue stretched out of his mouth. Jello then kicked the alien gladiator away with another kick. After seeing Jello use extremely provocative means to lure others to take action and suppress them with strong means, all the alien gladiators present had a terrible image of Jello in their hearts. In this way, in the fearful eyes of the aliens, Jello was a little at a loss. He looked at the scene in front of him and thought to himself. It seems that the words just now were a very insulting provocation in the ears of the alien. It seems that if he wants to gain a foothold, the first goal must be to find a way to communicate. After that, Jello, wearing a slightly damaged ace armor, found a place to sit down and rested. About 8 hours later, 2 guards found Jello. In the war world, Jello didn't know whether the timing method of Blue Star would work. The 2 guards pointed their laser rifles at Jello. The black muzzle didn't know what kind of powerful laser would be fired. They scolded Jello in a language familiar to Jello. Go. You have to participate in the gladiatorial contest today. This is arranged by Lord Mungo. The 2 guards spoke in English that Jello was familiar with. Jello speculated that the 2 guards were carrying something like a language translator, so that the language they spoke could be turned into English when it fell into Jello's ears. In order to get more information, Jello followed the 2 guards out of the camp and set out on the road to the arena. Not long after, a huge arena appeared in Jello's eyes. Before entering the arena, Jello looked at the guards around him and asked, "Can the gladiators get the translators on you?" After about 2 seconds, one of the soldiers replied to Jello, "As long as you win, you can get everything." Hearing this, Jello understood that he had to win the next battle. Only by winning can he have a chance to escape the war world. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter: The Transformed Beast Without Pain, Monthly Ticket Plus World of War. Under the guidance of 2 soldiers, Jello stepped onto the sandy arena. He looked around and found that there were walls hundreds of meters high around him. There were many eye holes on the walls, and a large light source transmitter hung above to provide light. Particles flowed slowly inside the armor, and the Michelin light blade could be condensed at any time. His muscles were constantly tense, his heartbeat began to speed up, and his mind power was highly concentrated. Now Jello was ready for battle. Today, our arena will welcome a newcomer. What kind of game will this newcomer bring us? Please wait and see. A voice came from above the arena, but Jello couldn't understand a word. In his ears, the voice was so harsh and torturous that he wanted to go up and block the guy's mouth. After the guy with the duck voice finished speaking, the wall opposite Jello slowly opened, and a tall figure slowly appeared in Jello's sight. Roar. Before the wall was completely opened, the figure roared strangely, then stretched out his strong arms and used his strange strength to push the wall open. Seeing this opponent with such great strength, Jello also took a fighting stance. The next moment, a flash of fire appeared in the darkness. Jello looked carefully and found that 5 missiles were flying towards him. Although he didn't know how powerful the missiles were, Jello didn't think of taking the attack while wearing the ace armor. He first wrapped himself with Ultraman's telekinesis, then jumped back suddenly, and the jet nozzle was activated at the same time. With the help of the jet nozzle, Jello dodged the 5 missiles at once. After losing the target, the 5 missiles fell on the ground covered with yellow sand. After 5 consecutive explosions, the shockwave raised layers of yellow sand, making the situation on the field suddenly unpredictable. Through the layers of yellow sand raised by the explosion, Jello saw a figure approaching him at high speed. In the blink of an eye, the figure came in front of Jello, raised its huge claws, and then pressed down on Jello. The huge claws brought gusts of wind when they pressed down. Seeing this, Jello rolled sideways, stood up and aimed at the tall figure. The particle generator on his forehead condensed Michelin particles and then surged out. Impact laser. A blue laser pierced through the smoke and shot towards the huge figure. Due to its large size, the huge figure seemed to have difficulty avoiding the fast attack of the impact laser. Bang! After a muffled sound, the skin of the huge figure exploded, and a little blood spilled on the ground. It seemed that it was injured. Roar, roar, roar. The huge figure roared in anger. The surrounding smoke was blown away by the vibration caused by the roar alone, and Jello also saw the true face of the huge figure. This is a lizard-like creature about 8 meters tall, with fierce eyes, a single horn on its nose, red mane covering most of its body, and many gum-like structures on its abdomen. It seems that the missile just now was shot from here. Its claws are bronze, and its thick thighs are covered with many unknown metals for reinforcement. It is obviously a modified monster. It probably deleted most of its nervous system for fighting. It can't even feel any pain when fighting. This behavior of transforming life into a weapon should not exist in this world. It seems that there is a volcano about to erupt in the chest cavity. The particles are highly active. The fists are unconsciously clenched and make sounds. The eyes behind the optical eyepiece also become sharp. Jello was angry. Then, Jello lowered his head, crossed his wrists, and the bright metallium particles kept interweaving and slowly formed an arc. It must be painful to be transformed like this. Jello said as if talking to himself, becoming like this, I don't even have a trace of emotion when I see my blood relatives. I'm not a self-touching person. Maybe, roar. The lizardman roared, and more than a dozen missiles flew out of the launch port on its abdomen, all flying towards Zero. Faced with missiles that were far more numerous than before, Zero did not dodge or evade, and remained standing. Boom, 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 boom. Continuous explosions sounded in the arena, and Zero's figure was gradually submerged in the smoke produced by the explosions. Roar. Following the command, the lizardman roared to the sky after the battle, as if announcing another victory. But the door of the arena did not open, and the lizardman searched for its enemy in the smoke. At this moment, a pair of orange-yellow eyes lit up in the smoke made of yellow sand. It's time to free you, poor soul. The smoke slowly dissipated, and Zero's figure slowly appeared in the eyes of the lizardman. The slightly damaged armor gave Zero, a young warrior, a sense of vicissitude, and the yellow sand in the arena kept scratching his helmet. At this time, Zero opened his hands horizontally, and a bright crescent-shaped light blade appeared between his palms. Jello stretched out his palms, and the brightly colored crescent-shaped blade flew towards the lizard beast. The crescent-shaped blade flew at an extremely fast speed, leaving the lizard beast no time to react. By the time it reacted, the crescent-shaped blade had already decapitated it. A mixture of oil and blood gushed out of the lizard beast's neck like a fountain, and then it slowly fell down. Jello was the only one left in the arena, unable to put down his hands. He looked at the remains of the lizard beast with mixed feelings. I hope you can rest in peace, poor life, Jello said silently in his heart, then came to the side of the lizard beast, picked up its fallen head, and put it back on the lizard beast's body. After taking a last look at this poor creature that had been transformed, Jello stretched out his hands and fired 2 high-temperature rays to cremate the lizard beast. Looking at the dust that the lizard beast had turned into flying all over the sky, Jello wished it a good afterlife and no longer be used as a weapon. A new inner is born. That extremely harsh voice sounded again, which made Jello extremely irritated. The door behind him slowly opened, and the 2 soldiers who had brought Jello here before appeared in front of Jello again. They looked at Jello, and the language they spoke was sent to Jello's ears through the translator. Congratulations on surviving, you'll get what you deserve. After saying that, the guard held something like a single-ear headset in front of Jello, with a very respectful expression. Tomorrow we'll return to double updates, but the 20 monthly ticket rewards, already accumulated twice for additional updates, are still valid. In the arena of War World, Jello looked at the 2 respectful guards, reached out his hand to take the language translator, and attached it to the right side of his helmet. After attaching it to the helmet of Ace's armor, a blue light lit up on the surface of the language translator, and then it started. Before Jello could test the function of the translator, the 2 guards made way and guided Jello. Glorious Victor, please follow me. The guard said to Jello respectfully. Faced with such a respectful guard, Jello had to follow him and slowly walked out of the arena. Jello, who was walking behind, paid attention to the equipment of the 2 guards. They were wearing combat uniforms that looked somewhat defensive, plus a blaster laser spear, and an iron collar-like thing around their necks. This looked very shabby and weird in a high-tech world. The class system in War World is very strict, and the level of these 2 guards should not be too high, so their equipment is so shabby. After following the 2 guards out of the arena, Jello was surprised to find that the arena was surrounded by a large number of aliens. Looking at the fiery eyes of the aliens of different shapes around him, Jello was a little uncomfortable. He didn't like this feeling. Jello knew why these aliens cast such fiery eyes on him, because he won the battle and presented them with a wonderful battle. But this so-called glory only made Jello feel sick in his heart. Fortunately, the helmet blocked Jello's expression, so these aliens who only knew how to pursue powerful gladiators did not see Jello's displeasure under the helmet. Under the guidance of the 2 guards, Jello came to a small house that was obviously much better than the previous environment. The architectural style of the small house is different from all the buildings on Earth. The walls that look like they have a wooden texture feel like stone. The 2 guards led Jello to the door and stopped moving forward. They gestured and let Jello walk into the small house alone. When Jello walked into the cabin, he found that the facilities inside were quite decent. There were 3 lights hanging from the ceiling, a large monitor hanging on the wall, and a large L-shaped sofa that looked quite soft around the monitor, plus some furniture. Jello exclaimed that the whole universe had the same sense of comfort. Jello walked deeper and found a lounge. In addition to some things that a normal bedroom would have, Jello also found a control panel. He went forward to open the control panel, and a lot of alien text suddenly came into Jello's eyes. If it weren't for the help of the translator, he really couldn't understand these texts. The language translator helped Jello translate these alien texts into texts he could understand. With the help of the information on the panel, Jello found that this cabin was not as simple as he imagined. He reached out and knocked on the panel a few times. After a few beeping sounds, the living room of the cabin changed. After the movement was completely over, Jello walked into the living room and found that it had changed a lot. The furniture that originally looked a bit worn was gone, replaced by various equipment that can be used to organize equipment. With just one glance, Jello could think of a simple combination of several equipment to turn them into destructive weapons. This is probably a device for gladiators to organize their equipment. Jello picked up something that looked like a cutter and looked at it. The cutter immediately popped up a light screen with alien text written on it that was most convenient for users to understand. This seems to be quite important to some gladiators with less knowledge reserves. It seems that as long as the brain is not filled with a ball of paste, they will know how to use these tools to maintain weapons, so as to ensure that their combat effectiveness is maintained at a stable level. After finding a few tools needed, Jello planned to use these tools to repair the ace hammer. He removed the ace hammer, then picked up the tools and started to repair the ace hammer. Sparks flew all over the room. About 6 Earth hours later, Jello finally stopped what he was doing. At this time, Jello's head was full of sweat, his brows were tightly locked, and he looked worried. Mungo, Jello bit his back teeth and recited word by word. Even after Jello's 6 hours of hard work, the damage rate of ace armor remained at 30%. This is a very high damage rate, and it is easy to make mistakes in battle. Mungo's punch caused great damage to ace armor, especially the energy core. The most important module was destroyed, resulting in a continuous combat time and maximum output power of ace armor unable to reach the peak. No, we must have more advanced equipment and materials. Jello came to a conclusion. Putting on the armor again alone, this war world is not a safe place. Jello can't guarantee that no one will attack him when he rests. Feeling the sense of security when the ace armor completely wrapped himself, Jello took a deep breath and then prepared to rest. Sizzle, sizzle. Just when Jello was about to take a break, the large display behind Jello suddenly lit up. He turned around and found that it was a communication request. He didn't know who had sent him a communication request at this time, but Jello still agreed to the other party's request. Hello, gladiator who defeated the number 1 modified beast. A figure wrapped in black ancient armor appeared on the display. This armor has the charm of the full-body armor of medieval knights on Earth. It is pitch black and it is unknown what metal it is made of. Jello can see that there are 2 long swords beside this black knight, and he still looks very alert. Who are you? Why can I find me? Jello looked at the person on the display vigilantly. Why can I find you? It seems that you don't know that in the war world, as long as you keep winning, you can get everything you want. There was a hint of teasing in the tone of the black knight. He clapped his hands and then said to Jello, as for me, you can call me Minhel. This word means the place where the dead go on my home planet. The place where the dead go? Isn't that a place like the underworld or hell? Jello was a little surprised. This name is like a Shinzao person named himself the King of Hell. Why are you looking for me? Jello asked in confusion. I just wanted to see you. You know, beast no. One has killed more than 20 gladiators. I was curious about who defeated Beast No. 1, so I asked someone to find your communication code. Minnie's eyes under the mask were staring at Jello. More than 20 gladiators. Jello was a little surprised by Beast No. 1's record, but Minnie spoke first. I'm looking forward to fighting with you. Don't die before fighting me, new guy. I only need 10 monthly tickets or 1,000 starting coins to add more chapters. Come on, brothers. Chapter Gladiator War World. As soon as the voice fell, Minnie did not wait for Jello to say a word, and then unilaterally ended the communication. Sizzle, sizzle. Minnie's figure disappeared from the monitor, and some thoughts appeared in Jello's mind. Who is Minnie? Why did he communicate with me, and then said something inexplicable, don't die before fighting him? If you want to get the answers to these questions, you can probably only ask Minnie in person. Or even if you ask in person, Minnie will not give a direct answer. Minnie, Jello whispered the name. After going over what he should do in his mind again, Jello went to the lounge and rested alone. About 10 hours later, Jello woke up from his rest. Physical function, telekinesis, energy, all indicators have returned to the most stable range. After finding some food in the cabin and filling his stomach with it, the monitor in the hall lit up again. You have new news. This monitor is operated by somatosensory. Jello waved his hand and opened the message. The next fight will start in 3 hours. Your receptionist will arrive in half an hour. Please be prepared. On the large display was a series of alien words. After the language translator, Jello could understand the meaning of the language. In fact, there is no unified time system in the war world. Since the war world is a mobile planetary fortress, it will not operate in any star system. This makes the time system of the war world very chaotic. The 3 hours and half an hour that Jello learned about are only available after translation. Other cosmic people generally do not speak these. Seeing this, Jello did not react. He just checked the armor again and adjusted some parameters according to the situation of the armor. Now the situation can only be to rob Peter to repair Paul. To repair or make a set of armor that is more suitable for fighting here, we must get better manufacturing conditions and excellent metals. Jello put down the universal screwdriver, then stood up and moved his body. The ace armor on his body made a crisp collision sound, which sounded quite pleasant. After a while, a hovercraft stopped in front of Zero's hut, and a one-eyed alien wearing a grey robe and grey skin got off the hovercraft. The one-eyed alien walked to the door politely, then raised his tentacles gracefully and pressed the doorbell next to the door. Ding dong, the crisp and pleasant bell sounded in the ears of the one-eyed alien. After a few breaths, Zero, wearing ace armor, opened the door. We have been waiting for you for a long time, Mr. Gladiator, please follow me. The one-eyed alien bowed to Zero very respectfully, making Zero a little uncomfortable for a while. Zero, who was a little uncomfortable, choked a little, and then said to the one-eyed alien, then led the way. Understood, Mr. Gladiator. The one-eyed alien seemed to have no lumbar vertebrae, and kept bending down, leading Zero to the hovercraft respectfully all the way. Even on the hovercraft, the one-eyed alien kept kneeling. This behavior of almost throwing his dignity to the ground made Jello a little unhappy, so he asked, "Why do you treat me with such courtesy? Is it because I am a gladiator?" "Yes, my gladiator." The one-eyed alien responded, "Gladiators are the most popular type of people in the war world. Almost no one does not want to be a gladiator. Becoming a gladiator is what everyone dreams of." Jello said that Roman Orthodoxy is an alien planet. As a normal student who has received 9 years of compulsory education and studied in college, and a young man who has been raised by decent parents in both lives, he really cannot fully accept this behavior. But if it is in a place like the war world, this behavior seems to become reasonable again. After all, in some places, a watch or a piece of chocolate can easily get something very important to those innocent and weak people. Or a hand, or an organ on the body, or dignity, or everything, but knowing this behavior and being able to fully accept this behavior are two different things. Jello will never accept this kind of thing that completely erases the dignity of others in his life. A seed began to take root in Jello's heart. "Stand up and talk to me," Jello said to the one-eyed alien. "Understood, sir." The one-eyed alien stood up from the floor. The interior of the hovercraft was very spacious, and even if the one-eyed alien stood up, there was more than enough space. Jello said calmly, "Next, I will ask you questions and you will answer them." "Understood, sir." "Tell me in detail the rules of the gladiators, in detail," Jello said to the one-eyed alien. "Different gladiators can enjoy different things. Every time a gladiator defeats 9 people, the level he can enjoy will be upgraded once, and if other gladiators defeat him, then the other gladiators will inherit the rights of the defeated gladiator." The one-eyed alien explained the cruel rules of the war world, and Jello did not interrupt him, but just let the one-eyed alien continue to speak silently. Like the No.1 modified beast you defeated before, it can kill 27 gladiators, and after you defeat it, your record is 28. There is no ranking among gladiators, and you may also encounter a gladiator who has experienced many battles. After listening to the one-eyed alien's words, Jello fell into deep thought. The rules of the gladiators in the war world are very deformed, but they can stimulate the desire of life. As long as you fight and kill, you can get everything you want. This sounds very tempting, isn't it? "Can you tell me who my opponent is in this battle?" Jello asked tentatively. "I'm sorry, sir, this is not something I can know." The one-eyed alien waved his hand apologetically, and then said, "However, gladiators who have won enough times can increase their momentum before the battle according to their own ideas." "Momentum?" Jello was a little puzzled. Some gladiators will act a war song before the battle, or use some means to increase psychological pressure on their opponents. The one-eyed alien explained to Jello with fear and trepidation. Jello was very upset after hearing this. He really didn't expect that the war world also had the same set of rules as on Earth. Seeing Jello was silent, the one-eyed alien asked, "Excuse me, do you have any needs for me to convey?" Every gladiator can make a wish before the battle. As long as he can survive, he can get what he wants. Including leaving the war world. Jello asked tentatively. "This wish is not allowed, sir." The one-eyed alien waved his hands repeatedly. Jello thought about it for a while, and then said to the one-eyed alien, "I need the best metal materials, various electronic components, and a studio that can perform the highest precision manufacturing and processing. Okay, I will convey my will to you. Please survive the next battle." As soon as the voice fell, the hovercraft took Jello to a larger arena, and Jello was about to face a new opponent this time. There are only 8 more monthly tickets left for more updates. Come on, brothers. Chapter Beast Head 4 War World. Jello slowly stepped into the arena this time. Compared with the last time, this time it was obviously much more advanced. Even standing at the entrance with metal fences, Jello saw that the battlefield was very wide. The towering walls around were made of unknown minerals, covered with traces, and there were bloodstains on the ground that looked like abstract paintings. Looking around, Jello found that there was a spherical display above his head to transmit the next battle to the audience. The walls around were 30 meters high. And on the 30-meter-high walls, there were seats that could accommodate tens of thousands of life forms. Although the performance had not yet begun, Jello also saw at least hundreds of cosmic people sitting in the audience. Although it was just a glance, there were at least a dozen races of these cosmic people. You can imagine how many races there are in the entire war world. And why did these races appear in the war world? This is very intriguing. The armor can't support the battle for too long, and it must be quick and decisive. Jello said worriedly after taking a look at the armor that seemed to be forcibly pieced together. The condition of the entire suit of armor could not be ignored. Electric sparks would even flash from time to time on the thigh armor, and at least 3 of the eject ports on the back were broken. As time passed, more and more aliens appeared in the audience. Dear audience, welcome to today's gladiatorial contest. Let's cheer for the 2 gladiators who were about to bleed to death. The speaker was a purple-skinned intelligent creature with 7 eyes on his face and a trumpet-shaped mouthpart standing on a hoverboard and shouting at the top of his lungs. Through the language translator, Jello could also understand what the trumpet-mouthed host said. "Fight. I want to see a life and death duel. Hurry up and start the fight. I want to see dead people." Nearly 10,000 spectators in the audience cheered loudly. Among them, there were aliens who were so excited that they vomited unknown liquids, and spread strange plants crazily. Various unheard of scenes appeared in front of Jello. Today, our arena will welcome a new gladiator. Although we don't know what he calls himself yet, we welcome our new gladiator now. The loudspeaker host yelled at the top of his lungs. At least to Jello's ears, it was no different from random yelling, but it was able to mobilize the emotions of the audience and make the audience in the auditorium cheer. The fence gate in front of him slowly opened, and Jello, wearing a damaged ace armor, slowly walked into the arena that was as wide as 3 or 4 football fields. Several light poles from nowhere hit Jello, and the all-round surveillance cameras suspended around him projected photos of Jello from all angles onto the large spherical display, enough for all the audience to see Jello in ace armor. It seems that our newcomers are a little embarrassed about the equipment. The loudspeaker host joked casually, but it quickly changed its tone and said to all the audience, "However, this will definitely not affect today's game. Because, there will definitely be a gladiator who dies on the scene. Next, please invite the gladiator who has won 36 games in a row, to enter." Thump 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 thump. Young man has no need to feel down. A round of strong music sounded. It seemed to be a very old song, at least a song from the 1980s. It was not until the lyrics sang "It's fun to stay at the YMCA" that Jello remembered what song it was. Fuck, how did these space people know this song? Jello wanted to go crazy at this moment, and his skin under the armor began to sweat coldly, and goosebumps appeared all over his body. Because this song was really representative of a certain time, the representative that could scare Jello, a purely heterosexual. At this time, several beams of colored lights hit the figure opposite Jello, allowing Jello to see the face of the newcomer clearly. Hey. Dear audience, you've been waiting for this. Wow. It turned out to be a big guy wearing very little cloth, with a strong body, twisted limbs, and krill eyes. It is known that he is the best among gladiators. Wow 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 wow, Jello exclaimed in a row. The gladiator who appeared in front of Jello was at least 4 meters tall, and his exposed skin was even more strange, as if it was made up of multiple lives, and there were as many as 4 heads. The legs used to support the body were normal, with only 2 thick thighs without any cloth wrapped, and there were 8 arms, which looked like an octopus. Is this really a life form that can appear naturally? Jello thought secretly in his heart, but the next second, he got the answer. Impossible. Even if Jello had little knowledge of the life forms of cosmic life, he knew that this kind of life form could never be born naturally. Today, the new gladiator is fighting against our old friend, the veteran gladiator codenamed Beasthead 4. In order to become more powerful, Beasthead 4 has made a unique transformation for himself. He has merged the bodies of 3 other races with himself. I believe he can bring infinite joy to today's battle. At this time, the loudspeaker host also began to introduce the powerful features of Beasthead 4 to the audience, and the loudspeaker roared incessantly. Each of the racial characteristics merged by Beasthead 4 has its own unique skills. Their fighting spirit and patience are amazing. Their secret weapons can bring unexpected joy to the audience. Dear audience, let us look forward to today's game. Suppressing the chill in his heart, Jello concentrated all his energy and was ready to fight at any time. The guy in front of him who called himself Beasthead 4 was not a guy who could be easily dealt with. Judging from his courage to put the heads of other races on his neck, this guy was probably crazy and had to be handled carefully. Beasthead 4, who was standing opposite Jello, aimed his 8 eyes at Jello at the same time. His 4 pairs of sturdy arms held 4 weapons at some point. There was a hint of teasing in his cold eyes, and one of his heads even started talking to the other 3. There's a new guy today, brothers. Boss, you can't kill him on the spot. Second brother is right. Fourth brother and I have developed a new way to play. We guarantee that this kid will have fun. Hehehe. Speaking of this, I, fourth brother, am not sleepy anymore. Listening to the communication between Beasthead 4 and Jello, he began to be wary of Beasthead 4. It seemed that seeing that the atmosphere on the field was almost brewing, the host with a loudspeaker shouted out the word that all the audience wanted to hear. The fight begins. The number of follow-up reads exceeded 400, and there will be 3 updates from the 2nd to the 5th. The rule of accumulating monthly tickets for additional updates is still valid. Currently, there are only 5 tickets left before another update can be added. Chapter The Ultimate Insult, Bushy World. As soon as the loudspeaker host said the game begins, the Beasthead 4 could no longer restrain the killing in their hearts. 8 eyes all flashed with cruel cold light. With one step, they rushed towards Jello. The 4 weapons were whistling as they were swung, which looked very scary. The Beasthead 4 just ran, and Jello could feel the strong wind they set off when they moved. Even the ground of the arena was shaking constantly. Jello also took this opportunity to get the information that the Beasthead 4 had a high volume density. The Beasthead 4's own movement speed was not slow, at least at the level of subsonic speed. In addition, the height of not less than 1 floor, it must be uncomfortable to be hit. Even Jello didn't want to be hit like this, and he was wearing the ace armor with low defensor. But fortunately, the ace armor was fully maneuverable. The jet nozzle on the back could be activated, plus Jello's own flying ability, so he narrowly passed by the Beasthead 4. Feeling Jello brushing past him, the one who placed himself on the head of the 3rd beast was the first to react. He held a heavy hammer in his 2 arms, which he directly controlled. He turned the direction of the fastest speed and smashed the hammer towards Jello. Don't run, baby. I'm going to eat you. The speed of the 3rd beast swinging the hammer was extremely fast. However, Jello's language translator was not very advanced, and there would be a delay in translation, so Jello threw a palm light bullet before he fully understood his words. The palm light bullet exploded violently as soon as it came into contact with the hammer. With the help of the reaction force of the explosion, Jello retreated again and again. Without bothering to think about why this cosmic person was gay, Jello crossed his hands, pulled out a crescent-shaped light blade, and threw it towards the 4th beast. Watch me. The 4th of the 4 beasts raised the giant pliers in his hand, and his movements were so fast, accurate and ruthless that he clamped the crescent-shaped light blade in one go. Although this crescent-shaped light blade cannot be compared with the energy intensity of Ultra Guillotine, it is also a good skill. And this move was actually caught by Beasthead 4. Afterwards, Jello silently calculated the remaining energy and armor status. He could only fight for about 3 minutes, and he had to make a quick decision. It's my turn now. Beast Head 4, who was like the second in command, spoke. He raised a long object covered with spikes and swung it at Jello. As Beast Head 2 swung it, those spikes were fired like missiles. Although these spike missiles looked small, Jello did not ignore them. He fired palm-light bullets while dodging them. Some of the spike missiles hit by the light bullets exploded on the spot, forming a fireball with a diameter of 3 meters in the air, while those spike missiles that Jello dodged went into the ground. After about 3 or 4 seconds, these missiles exploded one after another. Boom, 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 boom. That was the sound of continuous explosions. The explosions lifted up layers of soil, and a large amount of soil was blasted into the air, forming a smoke that obscured the vision. In this smoke, Jello was very passive. Outside the smoke, the boss of the 4 beast heads looked very excited, and the other 3 brothers skillfully gave up control completely. The beast boss, who was able to fully control his body, had just started, and he showed a terrible speed. As soon as he moved slightly, the place where he was standing before sank into a big pit, and behind him appeared a mark ring representing the speed of sound. The deafening sound of the sonic boom almost made the audience boil. In the war world, as long as a gladiator showed amazing strength, he could win the praise of most people. Remember, it was most people. Jello in the field naturally heard the sonic boom at the 4 beast heads breaking the speed of sound. He quickly found the best way out and wanted to escape from the attack range of the 4 beast heads. It's too late. Boy. Just accept our love. Almost instantly, Beast Head 4 suddenly appeared above Jello, and his huge body cast a large shadow. The short stick in his hand, which was still stained with the blood of an unknown creature, made Jello's pupils shrink. It was too late to leave. Jello knew this very well. In order to minimize the damage, he could only choose to resist. With both hands flat, particles condensed in his palms, forming a barrier of the fastest speed, forcibly blocking the attack of the short stick in Beast Head 4's hand. Crack, crack, crack. The sound of breaking sounded one after another. It was the barrier condensed by Jello that was gradually broken. As the barrier's bearing capacity reached its limit, the barrier also exploded with a bang. With the barrier destroyed, Jello was not feeling well. The huge force entered his body through his arms, causing severe damage to his internal organs, and blood began to flow from the corners of his mouth under the mask. The battle situation was not good, and the pursuit of the Beast Head 4 also followed. After the beast boss succeeded in one blow, he used the short stick to hit Jello horizontally again. Jello failed to dodge. In desperation, Jello was hit on the side of the waist by the Beast Head 4's stick. The huge force instantly spread throughout the armor and body, and then Jello flew backwards. The power of the Beast Head 4 was so terrifying that even Jello, who was hit and flew backwards, broke the speed of sound instantly, and the whole person flew backwards like a supersonic missile. It was not until he hit the wall of the arena heavily and sank deeply that Jello barely stopped. Moderate damage to internal organs, slight fracture of the spine, muscle fracture, slight concussion, and a broken rib that almost pierced the heart. Jello roughly judged his physical condition, and the tension in his heart suddenly reached a higher level. Warning. 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 The armor damage rate exceeds 75%, the armor output is reduced by 90%, and the sustainable combat time is 30 seconds. The built-in auxiliary system of the armor began to report errors, and various red lights flashed, which made Jello's eyes hurt. This time, Jello really encountered a life and death crisis. He even remembered the days in Metropolis and silently called Claire in his heart. At the same time, somewhere in the universe, Superman looked up at the deep space and murmured, "Jello." But at this moment, Superman could not save Jello anyway. Jello could only rely on himself. The strength of Beast Head 4 was almost not comparable to that of Jello wearing damaged armor. Whether it was strength or speed, the opponent was far superior to himself. In addition, the opponent had 4 heads that reacted at the same time, and it was almost impossible for him to resist. However, Ace Armor has another weapon, a weapon that Jello has not tested once until now. Once this weapon is out, he will definitely be able to defeat Beast Head 4. But should he get close to Beast Head 4 and ensure that the opponent will not dodge? Looking at the giant claws in Beast Head 4, Jello had a dangerous plan in his mind. In the chapter is to be saved until the end. War world. When the patchwork body of Beast Head 4 is completely controlled by Beast Boss, Beast Head 4 will be comprehensively improved. For Jello now, it is overwhelmingly powerful. The situation is critical, and Jello can't think too much. He suddenly exerts force on his shoulders, and falls to the ground again with some gravel. A drop of blood mixed with sweat fell to the ground through the gap in the armor. Jello began to breathe heavily, and even the sight of capturing the figure of Beast Head 4 began to blur. Can't lose, I must not fall here. The strong desire to survive made Jello gather energy again, and his muscles tightened again. Brother, look, this kid is not dead yet. Beast Boss 2 looked at Jello's figure and let out a series of weird screams. Oh? Beast Boss was a little surprised. He waved the stick in his hand twice and said sinisterly, then let me speed up the process a little bit. As soon as the voice fell, Beast Boss took control of the whole body, breaking the speed of sound with lightning speed, and rushed towards Jello. After being beaten, Jello, who was seriously injured, could barely catch the figure of Beast Head 4. He stretched out his right hand forward, and particle energy surged, and with the help of telekinesis, a long knife formed in his hand. With the long knife in his hand, Jello felt a little more secure in his heart. He turned sideways and held the long knife horizontally. The next second, a violent metal collision sounded in everyone's ears. Clang! The collision of the two weapons produced a violent impact, which set off a gust of wind. Even the ground under Jello's feet began to crack and his feet continued to sink. That is to say, there was nothing around for Jello and Beast Head 4 to destroy, otherwise even if there were several streets, they would not be enough for these two people to destroy. Boy, you did a good job, it's worth letting me play with you for a while. Beast Boss was in a good mood and even began to praise Jello. Jello no longer had the strength to answer Beast Boss. He waved his empty left hand backwards, and another long sword condensed out of thin air and was held in his hand. Not good. Beast Boss realized that something was wrong, but it was too late. I saw that cold light swung from bottom to top, crossing all obstacles and slashing towards Beast Head 4's body. Beast Boss paid the price for his arrogance. A bloodline cut him evenly in the middle, and blood continued to flow out. The Beast Boss, who was wounded by the knife, quickly controlled his body to retreat, but Jello's attack followed. Two disc blades flew out from his palms, drew a beautiful arc in the air, and cut off the arms of Beast 3 holding the giant hammer. Ah! My arms are... The pain made Beast 3 conscious. He shook his head and kept screaming. Beast 2 and Beast 4 also woke up after Beast 3. They both hurriedly comforted Beast 3, but it didn't work. A lot of green blood flowed from Beast 3's broken arm, and Beast Boss couldn't stand Beast 3 screaming, so he yelled at Beast 3 on the spot. Brother 3. Focus on fighting. If you lose an arm, you can get a new pair. If you lose the fight, you'll have nothing. After hearing the words of the Beast Boss 3 stopped. Big brother, second brother, fourth brother, help me torture that kid. Definitely. The other three heads all responded in unison. Looking back at Jello, he saw that he activated all the jets, and a sonic boom ring appeared behind him, also reaching the speed of sound. This guy, Brother 2, is too fast. When the control of his body was divided among the other three heads, the Beast Boss could not reach the speed of sound. Faced with such a situation, he asked Beast 2 to take action. Understood. Hearing this, Beast 2 ate the strange object covered with spikes in his hand. In an instant, all the spikes flew out, dense as a rainstorm. But they had to face Jello, who had reached the speed of sound. Jello, who was already overloaded with fighting, shuttled around like a swallow in the rain of missiles, and those missiles could not even touch his edge. Swish, swish. With two sounds of breaking through the air, the two long swords were thrown out by him and flew towards the fourth of the four beast heads. Based on his observation just now, Jello found that the fourth beast head was the slowest to react. The other three heads would definitely not sit idly by after discovering his attack. Fourth. The second beast head shouted hurriedly, and this shout gave Jello an opportunity. A light flashed in Jello's bloodshot eyes, and one of the long swords turned around and stabbed at the second beast head. Beast No. 2 ignored himself and was not careful for a moment. Jello's sword cut off the arm holding the strange weapon, and the strange weapon fell to the ground with a gurgle gurgle. On the side of the beast head, seeing that the second was also injured, he was immediately furious, but his mobility at this time was no match for Jello. The skill of the fourth beast head, which completely gave the consciousness to the beast head and thus unilaterally improved the beast head's ability, was conditional. It could only be entered when the consciousness of the other three did not fluctuate violently. Now, two of them were conscious of the pain and all the beast bosses could not enter that state. The plan was half completed. Jello was secretly happy while dragging his injured body at high speed, but he had not yet won completely. This battle had nothing to do with justice. He was just a gladiator who wanted to win. Jello knew it very well. After scratching Beast No. 2. Jello's hands suddenly burst into a strong light, like dozens of flash bombs exploding at the same time, covering the whole place. Even Beast No. 1 could not help but block the flash. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Jello came to the top of Beast No. 4, and the armor on his right hand began to deform and expand, about to form a hand cannon. However, at this moment, asshole didn't expect it. I will not be unaffected by the flash. In the dazzling light, Beast No. 4 controlled his arm to raise the giant pliers and clamped Jello tightly. He was full of anger and kept increasing the strength in his hands, determined to crush Jello on the spot. Crack, crack, crack. The sound of armor shattering and bones breaking was endless. Almost everyone saw the scene of Jello being cut in half. I was afraid you couldn't catch me. Jello spoke for the first time in this fight, but what he said made the 4 beast heads confused. The helmet of Ace armor kept flashing with colorful light, which was the result of the auxiliary system overloading when transferring high-intensity energy. And the transfer target was the right-hand armor. All the 4 beast heads immediately realized that something was wrong, but it was too late. The right-hand armor of Ace armor had turned into a hand cannon, and the colorful light that could no longer be suppressed gushed out. At this extremely close distance, all the heads of the 4 beast heads were instantly vaporized on the spot. Boom. Losing control of the head, the body of the 4 beast heads fell to the ground. Enduring the severe pain and breaking free from the giant claws on his body, Jello crawled out from the remains of Beast Head 4 in a panic. He raised his right hand reluctantly and said, the so-called trump card should be saved until the end. Only one more monthly ticket left for more chapters. Zimbalillo, monthly ticket plus War World. When the new era appeared, the cosmic people watching the battle fell silent for a moment. After about 2 or 3 breaths, thunderous cheers broke out from the audience. Various cosmic people congratulated Jello's victory in different languages. As for Beast Head 4, they didn't care. These cosmic people living in the world only cared about one thing, that is, the blood flowed like a river. The overwhelming sound was a bit harsh to Jello's ears, but he was powerless to think about other things. Due to the large amount of blood that flowed during the battle, and his spine was already broken, Jello no longer had enough energy to continue standing. His eyes went black, and then he let gravity pull him backwards. He had no idea what happened next. When Jello opened his eyes again, he found himself lying on a recline that just fit his body. The surroundings were very unfamiliar to Jello, but there were many medical instruments. The recline was very soft, and Jello felt that the so-called ergonomic chairs on Earth were probably far inferior to this chair. But there was one thing that made Jello very dissatisfied. Why are my hands and feet tied up? Jello wanted to sit up, but found that his hands and feet were bound by straps made of unknown materials, which made his range of movement very small. At this moment, a creature with a toad head but a body similar to that of a human came over. The specific gender could not be distinguished. Maybe his race did not have gender division. The Toad Man looked at Jello, and his face covered with pimples like a toad showed an extremely surprised look, and exclaimed, "Mr. Gladiator has woken up." The Toad Man's shout immediately attracted other cosmic people outside the room. A group of cosmic people wearing medical clothes in Jello's cognition ran in. They had a bunch of instruments in their hands and started to test Jello without saying anything. The heartbeat is normal. The blood pressure is normal. The bone strength is normal. The blood is abnormal. A bunch of words indicating that Jello's physical signs were normal suddenly jumped out with the word abnormal, which immediately attracted the attention of all the lives in the room, including Jello. Oh my god, there are substances in the blood of Mr. Gladiator that I have never seen before. A spaceman with goat horns and a bull head exclaimed. How can the radioactivity index be so high? Even the large-scale weapons in my hometown may not have such readings. The spaceman covered with fur widened his 7 eyes and said in disbelief in front of the instrument. Listening to the words of the spaceman through the translator, Jello felt that he was not a human life form, but a monster that could run around and whose blood could be used to make nuclear bombs. But the most urgent thing was to break free from the restraints. Although he was safe, his strength had not yet fully recovered, so he said to the spaceman, "Untie me quickly." After passing through the translator, this sentence fell accurately into the ears of a group of spacemen, causing them to suddenly become noisy. Yes, untie Mr. Gladiator quickly. One of the spacemen with 13 arms reacted and helped Jello untie the restraints on the spot. Click, 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 click. After 4 clicks, Jello was free. As soon as he was free, Jello jumped up from the recliner and landed on the floor of the room. The cold feeling under his feet made him feel a little uncomfortable. So Jello looked down and found a very shocking fact. His handsome face suddenly turned red, and then he screamed like a little girl. "All of you get out." After hearing the order from Jello, a group of cosmic people instantly ran out of the room. Jello, who had never experienced such a thing, began to breathe heavily, and then found a white tights in this room that should be a ward. Although he used to be very averse to tights, Jello couldn't care less now and put it on. The tights had a high coverage rate, and Jello's entire body was exposed except for his head. Knock, knock, knock. There was a rhythmic knocking sound outside the door, and there was a voice asking Jello, "Master Gladiator, may I come in?" The voice sounded familiar, so Jello said, "Come in." After Jello's permission, the man pushed open the door, and walked in a very reserved and respectful manner. Jello was very familiar with the man, who was the one-eyed man who had answered Jello's questions on the hovercraft. When he saw Jello, he performed a similar etiquette to kneeling down and saying, "Respected Gladiator, I don't like this kind of address. By the way, I don't like people kneeling in front of me." Jello interrupted the one-eyed man, and then said, "Just tell me your mission." "Okay, Master Gladiator, what I want to tell you is that I will be your exclusive butler in the future and handle trivial matters for you. In addition, I will take you to your new residence, where you will have everything you need." The one-eyed man said respectfully, "Then let's go." "Oh, by the way, where is my previous armor?" Suddenly, Jello asked the one-eyed man about the Yes armor. The one-eyed man replied, "Your armor has been damaged in the battle, but the wreckage has been well preserved. If you need it, I can have someone send the armor to your new residence. Do you think this is okay?" "Okay, go ahead." Jello nodded, and then said, "But you don't have to do this in front of me. I'm not used to it." Listening to the tone of the one-eyed man, Jello felt like a slave owner, which made him feel very uncomfortable. In addition, he was forcibly captured to the war world to become a gladiator, so Jello didn't like the identity of gladiator that brought him everything other than the necessary things. "Okay, Mr. Gladiator." The one-eyed man was still the same. It seemed that Jello couldn't change him in a day or two. Forget it. After a long sigh, Jello shook his head, and then said to the one-eyed man, "Tell me your name." "I'm Luluho from the planet Kanza. You can call me whatever you want, Mr. Gladiator." The one-eyed man Luluho replied. "Luluho, take me to my new residence." Jello shook his head helplessly, and then motioned Luluho to take him away from this place. "It is an honor to serve you, please follow me. Tomorrow the new armor will be online. You can guess which one it is. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. I'm just a scientist. War world. The hovercraft stopped in front of a spherical building. The building was made of metal. From the outside, it looked like there was only one door, and there was no other place for ventilation. After arriving at the place, Jello jumped off the hovercraft, stepped on the clean enough ground to reflect light, and then set his sights on the spherical building. The one-eyed man Luluho followed Jello and got off the hovercraft, and then introduced Jello. "This is your new residence. This building has a custom function. It can change its appearance according to your preferences. The internal facilities are also very complete. Most of the living facilities are built in, and there are also special training equipment. If you encounter other needs, you can notify me at any time and I will get it for you. As for the metal and studio you specifically requested, they have been set up for you. Now you can enjoy everything you have fought for. Thank you." Jello replied. Jello did not regard Luluho as a slave from the bottom of his heart, so when Luluho explained to him, he would thank Luluho for this. "This is my mission." Luluho bowed his head and said respectfully, "Your mission is not to serve others in such a humble manner." Jello didn't know how to enlighten Luluho verbally, so he could only pray for him silently in his heart, and then walked into the spherical building. When Jello just stepped into the building, the system built into the spherical building sensed the arrival of Jello, the master, and automatically opened the door for him. As soon as he entered the building, the gentle and bright white light filled the entire room, allowing Jello to see the internal structure clearly. Just as Luluho said, all the furniture that Jello could think of was in this building. It was much more exquisite than the previous wooden house. The large display that occupied the entire wall could broadcast the battles in the arena at any time. After checking whether there were any monitors inside the building, Jello let down his guard a little, and then came to the training area. After checking it out like checking the living area, Jello came to the studio he specifically requested. There were all kinds of instruments in the studio, which looked very high-tech, and there was a manual around each instrument. After all, this was not the ultralight he was familiar with, and there was no oil to help him get familiar with everything. He could only rely on himself. So, Jello read all the manuals carefully. With the help of the translator, words were no longer a barrier. After an unknown amount of time had passed, Jello closed the last manual, and then found a box in the corner. After opening it, the broken ace armor appeared in front of him. Picking up the helmet full of cracks, Jello felt extremely melancholy. He put his forehead on the ace armor helmet and said in a voice that only he could hear, "I'm sorry, I will fix you." Then, Jello gently put the helmet on the table next to him, and then found the energy core and the only remaining right arm armor from the armor wreckage. After connecting the energy core and the helmet with the universal interface, Jello opened the processing terminal and began to receive the data in the ace armor. These data could help him save time to a great extent. Looking at the data that kept passing by on the screen, a rough model appeared in Jello's mind. Then, he called up the indoor holographic projection and began to carve on the holographic projection like an artist. At this moment, Jello was like Michelangelo who put all his energy into his creation. A masterpiece was about to appear in his hands. At present, it seems that I don't need to draw out my trump card. I just need a set of universal armor that can adapt to various environments. Jello looked at the holographic projection with blue light, waved his hand, and deleted some things from the model. The flight system can be deleted. I already have the ability to fly, and I can't build a system here that greatly increases my flight speed. Most of the weapon systems can be deleted. After all, I'm the best weapon myself. Just keep the particle generator on the right arm for emitting light. Oh, by the way, if the data of the constrained particles in the disc blade and the guillotine are used, then can't I get a lightsaber? The armor doesn't need to be kept. Thickening the armor can confuse some enemies. The whole body armor should be thickened, even the energy core in the chest should be covered. Various ideas burst out from Jello's mind. In the end, what appeared in front of Jello was an all-terrain general-purpose combat armor with full armor, closed eyes, Alpha-style detection receivers on both sides of the helmet, and only the right arm was equipped with a particle generator. This set of armor is extremely versatile. No matter what harsh environment it is in, this set of armor can complete the task. However, despite its high versatility, this set of armor still has some disadvantages, that is, it puts a great burden on Jello and the combat time is limited. Jello needs to have a stronger body to control this armor more freely, but because Jello does not care about the cost of integrating metal, the defense of this armor has become very terrible. Without the particle data provided by Oya, I can't generate particles suitable for this armor. After finishing the armor design, Jello suddenly said in annoyance, "But if I use the metalium particles of Ace's armor, it can't completely fit this armor." Thinking of this, Jello had a headache. When Jello was about to enter a blind spot in his thinking, an idea suddenly appeared. In this case, I will generate a special particle according to my memory of the particle data. As long as the mind does not slip, there are always more solutions than difficulties. Jello explained this saying very well. So, based on his memory of other particle data, plus the existing metalium particle samples, Jello began to design a particle that may not even exist in Oya's database. When a person finishes a task with a high degree of concentration, he will feel that time passes very quickly. Even Jello himself didn't notice that more than 40 hours had passed. With thick dark circles under his eyes, Jello looked at the particles in front of him and laughed. Ha ha ha. I succeeded. The particle readings on the instrument were very stable, which meant that Jello was very successful. The dark blue particles are very beautiful, and when a large number of new particles gather together, they will burst out with very beautiful arcs of light, and the scene is quite gorgeous. Since the color of the new particles is dark blue, Jello decided to change the color of the new armor from the previous silver red color to silver blue, and add a little gold as embellishment, and the design stage of the whole set of armor is completed. The next step is to make the armor. The source of all evil is online ahead of schedule. Chapter Hunter Night Sword War World. The production of the whole set of armor is not troublesome. Although there is no help from Oya and no equipment suitable for manufacturing armor in the ultralight, Zero still made a new set of armor in a very short time. Compared with the previous 5 armors made on Earth, this set of armor is slightly rough in manufacturing technology. If the previous 5 armors are precision anti-material sniper rifles, then this set of armor completely made by Zero is the AK-47 that can adapt to all battlefields. If you want to change an example, the first 5 armors are the follow-up armors carefully built by Tony Stark in the MCU, and this armor is the MK1 that Tony Stark rushed out to deal with terrorists. However, Zero's armor is still much stronger than the MK1. Although the armor structure is simple, it is efficient and stable, and it is worth Zero to wear it as a battle suit. As for the storage of the armor, since there is no oil as a backup, Zero did not have a built-in transmission system for it, but adopted the storage and folding technology that is not mature for him. In Jello's idea, the folding technology should be to fold the armor into an accessory that can be carried with you, but after actual operation, Jello found it extremely difficult. The weight of the armor will not be reduced after folding, which Jello can accept. Anyway, he can now play heavy tanks as basketballs, so he is not afraid of such a small weight. But the volume after folding is a little beyond Jello's imagination, let alone the small and exquisite wrist guard in the design. The device in front of Jello, which wraps from the fingertips to Jello's elbow, is like a heavy boxing glove, which is many times different from the design. There is no way. I lack the relevant nanotechnology, and I am not familiar with the properties of alien metals. There is no way to make it like this. Jello frowned and then put the boxing glove on his right arm. After putting it on Jello's right arm, the boxing glove began to emit a faint blue light. After about 3 seconds, the blue light disappeared, which meant that Jello had bound this set of armor. As for the ace armor, Jello also repaired it, but he had no plan to use it again for the time being. I'm afraid what I'm going to do next won't be like an Ultraman. Jello looked at the fist glove on his wrist and murmured. After a moment's silence, he said, "Here, you and I will call each other Hunter Nightsword." After a brief thought, the code name of the armor was set as Hunter Nightsword, and the code name of the gladiator was the same. Hunter means that Jello will fight to defeat every opponent, Knight is because the armor is similar to the heavy armor on Earth, and Sword is because the main weapon is a golden lightsaber. As for the number, Jello is not going to add it to this not-so-complete armor for the time being. And the glove before transformation is called by Jello. With a slightly open palm, the blue-gold short stick fell into Jello's left palm. The blue-gold short stick was just big enough for Jello to grab with one hand. Then, Jello swung the short stick vigorously, and countless particles condensed into a sword shape at one end of the short stick, and finally formed a lightsaber with a blade at 1 meter and 1 meter. The color of the lightsaber was golden, very beautiful. When Jello waved it casually, a golden after-image would be left in the air, accompanied by a faint buzzing sound, and he suddenly looked like a Jedi Knight. This was the main weapon of the Hunter Nightsword armor, the Hunter lightsaber, and the Hunter lightsaber's function was more than that. The golden lightsaber blade turned into particles and disappeared in the air. Then, Jello held the hilt of the Hunter lightsaber and inserted it into the connection between the wrist and forearm of the Hunter armor. The inside of the Hunter armor received the command, and blue light bloomed on the Hunter armor. Then, a series of metal collisions were heard. The Hunter armor first extended the armor of the right upper arm, followed by the shoulder armor of the right shoulder, and then the chest armor and the entire left-hand armor. The chest armor extended the neck armor, and the neck armor extended the helmet. After the armor of the entire upper body was extended, it began to extend to the lower body. The carefully formulated metal has very good flexibility and extensibility, and there will be no obstruction even when wrapping the lower abdomen. When both legs are completely wrapped, the armor is completely worn. After the whole body is dressed, the size of the Hunter's arm is much smaller, with only a little more protrusion than the left arm armor. The structure of the Hunter's Nightsword armor is very simple. Jello deleted most of the plug-in systems that can be removed, which make Jello have to process and think about some data himself. But Jello added a new system to the Hunter's Nightsword armor, the Environmental Adaptive System. This system can automatically adapt to the environment and can help Jello solve the strange combat environments in the war world in battle, so that he will not be in a hurry when he is thrown into an unknown environment. In order to test the armor, Jello came to the training area built into the building and walked into the most important simulation training cabin that can imitate most environments. The simulation training cabin has many harsh environments built in, all of which are alien environments that Jello is not familiar with, so he chose a more familiar desert-like environment. After Jello determined the environment, the simulation training cabin began to simulate the real alien environment. Green lights flashed around, and soon after, Jello, wearing the Hunter Nightsword armor, was in a desert. The air around was scorching hot. If it were a real environment, even if he just took a breath, it would probably burn his trachea. The ground temperature was at least 100 degrees Celsius. The sand under his feet was very loose and soft, and Jello, wearing the Hunter Knight sword armor, was 2 meters tall and weighed 5 tons. Jello knew exactly what would happen when this weight stood on the soft and loose sand. Falling. Quicksand will devour everything that does not know its own limits without mercy. But Jello was very confident in the suitability of the Hunter Knight sword armor to the environment. Before the sand swallowed him, the adaptive system of the Hunter Knight sword armor began to start. In less than 1/10 of a second, the Hunter Knight sword armor completed its autonomous adaptation. With a slight adjustment of the foot armor, Jello was able to stand steadily on the sand dunes. Very good, it's really a system I designed. Jello boasted. Although no one here could hear his boasting, only the simulation training cabin continued to simulate the harsh environment of the next stage according to the set program. With a glance, Jello found that the sand in the distance began to float slightly, and the wind began to blow around him, so he raised his head slightly. Although the Hunter Knight sword armor could not find any scene capture device from the outside, Jello could still see everything outside. In the distance, a yellow sandstorm gradually formed, and the overwhelming momentum was suffocating, and even the horizon was reflected in sand yellow. Even the air where Jello stood was a little turbid, and the visibility was probably less than 30 meters. The speed of the sandstorm was also very fast, with the maximum speed exceeding 500 meters per second. This scene was very scary even in a simulated environment. If it was someone with a weak mind, he would probably have been scared to the point of weakness. Jello just quietly waited for the sandstorm to come, and even when the sandstorm covered him, he did not move at all. The Hunter Knight sword armor is a separate armor used to represent the protagonist's dark experience, just like it also represents the past when Juan was blinded by revenge. Chapter Search War World. After several hours, Jello finished the harsh environment test of the Hunter Knight sword armor. The Hunter Knight sword armor performed very well in the environmental test, enough to be qualified, but it still needs some minor adjustments. After leaving the simulation training cabin, Jello returned to the studio. He placed the Hunter Knight sword armor, which had been transformed into a hunter weapon, on the workbench, then took out a toolbox, selected a few tools from it, and began to make fine adjustments. The waterproofness still needs to be optimized a little bit, and more coating materials need to be tested to improve the armor's resistance to corrosion. After Jello completed the final fine-tuning of the Hunter Knight sword armor, he couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief, and a long-lost smile appeared on his face. Finally, the Hunter Knight sword armor is almost finished. After all, this is a war world where a desperate battle may happen at any time. He must improve his combat effectiveness to the peak, so as to ensure that he can maintain his combat effectiveness when he is ready to fight. After doing all this, Jello felt very tired, so he stretched his body, and then he put the hunter's weapon on his right hand with a bit of suspicion, and then he returned to the living area. After finding a place to lie down, Jello fell into a deep sleep. After recovering from a serious illness, he started working intensively. If Jello didn't have a strong physical fitness to back him up, he would probably die suddenly. Jello slept very deeply this time. Although it was not very comfortable, he slept for a long time. About 10 hours later, Jello woke up naturally. He scratched his head, found the sink in the living area, washed himself, and found the food production machine. With the real-time translation of the translator, Jello could understand the text on the machine, but it was because he could understand it that Jello would frown. Ankamorgua. What is this? Looking at the edible plant on the screen that was not only the same size but also that color and pattern as a basketball, Jello fell into deep thought. Is this thing really not for taking pictures? I must find a book on alien plants. Jello swore secretly in his heart. After flipping through a few pages, Jello barely found a few familiar vegetables, and added a few edible meats that most races could swallow, and then started the food machine to run. A few minutes later, the food machine made a long sound, and a large bowl of steaming food appeared. Jello leaned over and sniffed it, and found that the taste was okay, so he found tableware that could be used by Earthlings in the box next to it, and then ate it in big mouthfuls. Although Jello didn't know much about the composition of this plate of food, when his taste buds touched the first bite, he felt that it tasted good. At least it was much better than the convenient sandwiches and milk he bought on Earth, and Jello felt full of strength after eating it, and he was more energetic than drinking a liter of coffee. After all the most basic problems were solved, Jello began to think about some other problems. How to escape from the war world. As far as Jello knows, The war world is actually a planet-sized mobile fortress, and its specific location is constantly moving, which makes it difficult for him to send a call for help to the Green Lantern Corps or Brother Clerk on Earth. A simpler and more effective way than sending a distress signal is to use force to defeat Mongo. But Jello currently only has a guillotine to threaten Mongo, but Mongo's own strength is not weak. It is undoubtedly very difficult to kill Mongo with the guillotine. For a while, Jello had a headache, and at this moment, he thought of a person, Mingy. This is the good person he met in the war world, except for the one-eyed Luluo. This person named Mingy even warned him to be careful, and he seemed to be a gladiator who had won many times. Moreover, Jello was also very curious about how that guy found him. But where should he go to find him? Confusion lingered in Jello's heart, so he walked to the door, put his hand on the pager beside the door, and whispered, "Luluo, I need to ask you something. Respected gladiator, please wait a moment." Luluo's respectful voice came from the pager. About 5 seconds later, there was a knock sound outside the door. This surprised Jello a little. He opened the door, and the one-eyed man Luluo appeared outside the door. He looked at Luluo's one eye and said, "Come in, Luluo, I need to ask you something." "Sir, I'm just a servant." Luluo lowered his head and spoke in a very low tone. "Don't be nagging, come in, I have something to ask you." Hearing Luluo's words, Jello frowned slightly, and immediately changed to a tough attitude, and asked Luluo to come into the house in a commanding tone. The situation in the war world is worse than Jello imagined, or even worse. "As you wish." Luluo bowed deeply, and then followed Jello into the house. The door closed automatically, the lights in the room were bright, and the surroundings were so clean that Luluo was a little unbelievable. He lowered his head, and one of his big eyes couldn't help but observe the surroundings, but soon he rebuked himself for this degenerate idea. When he wanted to take this as a warning, Jello spoke. "Luluo, let me ask you, if I want to find other gladiators, where can I meet other gladiators?" Jello looked at Luluo and asked him his question. "Sir," Luluo was about to answer, but Jello interrupted him again. "Don't call me sir, if you must use it honorific, just use sir," Jello said with a headache. "Okay, sir," Luluo quickly changed his words, "if you want to get information before the war, or want to have fun, you can go to Burno City." "Burno City? What is the place?" Jello asked. At first, Burno City was just a place where many gladiators gathered in their free time, but as the number of gladiators increased, it gradually became a city, and other lives would go there to win the favor of the gladiators. Luluo replied. After listening to Luluo's explanation, Jello realized that this Burno City was not simple, and he became interested, so he asked Luluo, "So, it shouldn't be difficult for me to find someone in Burno City?" "With your status, sir, it's certain," Luluo answered firmly. "What if I'm looking for another gladiator with a long winning streak?" Jello asked back. Luluo replied, "Okay, do you need me to explain the rules and things to pay attention to in Burno City?" "Go ahead, I also need to understand these things." Chain Burno City. War World Burno City. This city was originally just a gathering place for some gladiators. Later, due to the increase in the number of people coming and going, it gradually developed into a small town until it became the current city. As for the origin of the name Burno City, it is impossible to verify. The most widely circulated story is that the word Burno means night in the language of a certain race. This is the most widely spread source. There are also races that say that Burno in their language means night, so Burno City has the nickname Night City. Today, there are nearly 10 million cosmic people living in the Night City, but most of them can only live in a small space and may die at any time. The entire war world does not have an economic system to speak of, and even most lives do not have the concept of work, which leads to the fact that the only thing that most cosmic people can exchange for supplies in the war world is their own body. Spine, arms, internal organs, eyes, claws, as long as it is something on your body, it can be used to exchange for resources. Of course, Burno City will not turn cosmic people into disabled people, because in that case, they will be of no use to the war world. After the organ is removed, a doctor will replace the cosmic person with a mechanical prosthesis, but don't think about how advanced the mechanical prosthesis is, it's just usable. At this time, the cosmic person can only go to the arena and wait. Maybe he can strip the prosthesis from the knockdown gladiator and install it on himself to gain combat power. This is the life of the bottom life in the war world. No one will want to obtain resources, they will only try their best to gain combat power and find a way to become a gladiator. A twisted world. Jello commented. Unlike other cosmic people who are trapped in an endless vicious cycle, Jello cares about another thing, that is, if all life does not engage in production, how will the resources to maintain the operation of the war world come from? Luluo's answer to Jello is that Mongo will send looters to plunder resources, but there are many cosmic people in the war world, and the largest city of Burno has tens of millions of cosmic people. The number of other gathering places is not as large as Burno City, but there are tens of millions of cosmic people in total. The number of lives in the war world may not be as large as the population of a small country on Earth, but you have to know that no cosmic person in the war world has ever thought about producing resources. So, can we really survive just by plundering resources? And what if we encounter Green Lantern, Brainiac or Brainiac's clone? Even if we rely on the resources accumulated in the past, War World is afraid that it will be in a very dangerous situation. There are hundreds of millions of aliens living here. Jello dare not imagine that scene, but he is currently unable to change War World. What Mongo did was too terrible. Mongo almost turned the entire War World into his clay doll, kneading it at will, and it is likely to be irreversible. Walking on the streets of Burno City, Jello was thinking about something. The high-top boots splashed black water on the ground, and this strange black water splash was probably corrosive. In order to travel, Jello changed some clothes. Most areas of Burno City are very bad, so Jello had to wrap himself up. Jello wore a white coat on his upper body, a black high-density tight t-shirt inside, and a pair of pants with the same material and high stretchability on his lower body. He wore a pair of high-top boots on his feet, a hunter weapon on his right hand, and a glove on his left hand. Jello's head, which seemed to be exposed, was protected by an invisible optical shield, and even his hair was covered with a layer of white paint. This white paint can protect the hair very well, and even radioactive substances cannot damage his hair. I will never let my hair be harmed again. Jello swore. Walking on the streets full of unknown liquids, Jello felt a lot of hostility. From the outside, Jello was a native without any transformation, and a race that rarely appeared in the war world. If he was kidnapped, he would definitely be able to exchange for a lot of combat mechanical prostheses. But the hunter weapon on Jello's right hand, which looked like a barrel, frightened most of the evildoers. No one dared to test the power of the hunter weapon first. Under mutual fear, Jello was actually very safe. After walking for a long time, Jello found a place suitable for his body type to enter. Looking around, there were all kinds of cosmic people. Some cosmic people looked like those who had undergone iron perm. Many cosmic people were much taller than Jello, and most of them had undergone prosthetic transformation. After Jello's observation, this place is the largest, best decorated, and has the most customers that he knows of. He should be able to get some information about the one called Minhel. The decoration of this place is somewhat similar to the bars on Earth. Some cosmic people will gather around a table and drink something that should be a drink, and then talk. After finding the place that should be the bar, Jello sat on the floating chair and said to the bartender who was wiping the square container, "Give me a glass of milk produced by a black and white patterned two-horned four-hoofed animal." The thing Jello said is actually a bit like milk, but it tastes a bit like wine. It tastes a bit strange, but there is no way, this is one of the few things he can drink. The bartender, who looks like transparent jelly, looked at Jello, and his jelly-like body trembled. With the help of the translator, Jello understood this unique language. "Okay, I'll serve it to you right away, respected gladiator." The jelly cosmic person grew an arm in front of Jello's eyes. The arm kept moving and finally served Jello a glass of something that looked like milk. After the jelly bartender brought the milk, Jello did not drink it, but asked the jelly bartender, "I want to inquire about something. Do you have the ability here?" The language was finally heard by the jelly bartender through the translator. The jelly bartender's body, which had been shaking before, stopped for a while, and after a while, he shook again. "If you can show some strength, I will serve you." Hearing this, Jello's face changed, and his ears moved, and he caught the sound of the tables and chairs around him being moved. Some cosmic people slowly took out their weapons, and those without weapons were debugging their prostheses. Just like Luluo said, as long as you are here for a second, if you don't want to live with your head down, you have to show your strength. Jello said calmly, the hunter's armed forces were not deployed, and these small fish were not qualified for him to use the hunter's armed forces. The cosmic people kept surrounding Jello, and Jello accurately locked these cosmic people who wanted to surround and kill him, and then his telekinesis burst out, and all the cosmic people flew backwards like rats. I only need 8 more monthly tickets to update, come on brothers. Chapter Darkness. War World. Dozens of aliens fell around the bar, smashing many tables and chairs. Some liquids that they had not yet drunk were spilled on the ground, mixed with some liquids that were not sure whether they were oil or blood, and the scene became very messy. Wow! It's a strong man. Everyone, run! The aliens who were not knocked unconscious shouted hurriedly and fled this place of trouble. Those who were not fainted ran outside the store, while the fainted aliens were left in the store. Glancing at the surroundings with the corner of his eyes, Jello said to the jelly bartender, "Is this strength enough? Enough, enough, enough." The jelly bartender's body shook wildly, and the frequency was so high that it seemed to shatter himself. "My lord, please follow me." After seeing Jello kill dozens of thugs in a second, the jelly bartender no longer thought of anything wrong. He left the bar, walked to a wall, and stretched out his arm to knock on the wall twice, and a faint sound of electricity came from the wall. Half a second later, the wall opened, revealing a passage. "Please follow me, sir," the jelly bartender said respectfully. Hearing this, Jello scanned the passage 3 times with his telekinesis, and then followed the jelly bartender into the passage. The passage was 4 meters wide and 7 meters high, very suitable for life forms of Jello's size to pass through. There were no stairs, but a slope going down. After walking down for about 300 or 400 meters, a very wide space appeared in front of Jello. You can just call this the dungeon. As long as there is something in the war world, you can get it here, the jelly bartender explained to Jello on the side. The dungeon was very large and could accommodate at least 20,000 cosmic people. Jello looked up again and found that there was a huge luminous body about 100 meters away that provided lighting for the dungeon. "Can I find anyone?" Jello asked. "That depends on what level of gladiator the person you are looking for is, but as long as you show enough strength, there will be many guys who will offer their sacrifices for you." The words of the jelly bartender were similar to those of Luluo. After hearing this, Jello waved his hand and said calmly, "You can go." "Okay, sir." With Jello's permission, the jelly bartender immediately fled without stopping. After the jelly bartender left, Jello walked into the underground city alone. The underground city was full of various sheds stacked with simple materials. Some aliens would paint patterns on parts of themselves to indicate that they could be sold. They would also put something like a sign next to them to express what they wanted. There were also aliens who would display that prostheses or weapons they'd pulled off corpses. These aliens would also express the items they wanted to exchange, just like those aliens who sold their own organs. Primitive. The feeling that this place brought to Jello can be summarized in one word. There was also a faint smell of blood in the air, which made Jello frown. The dungeon showed Jello the most real side of the war world. This extremely primitive barter stimulated Jello's will all the time. About 30 meters away, an alien was cutting off the arm of another alien alive. There was no disinfection or anesthesia. The alien's heart-wrenching screams made Jello want to destroy his hearing. The instrument used to cut the arm was a big like the wire saw on Earth. It was obviously an engineering instrument, but it was used in this place at this moment. The alien who executed the cutting order was also very cruel. He smiled throughout the whole process. The wire saw in his hand was not hurried or slow. He cut off the arm of another alien little by little. During the process, blood foam splashed everywhere, and the executor was even very happy. The severe pain almost tore the alien's sanity apart. The poor man spit out white foam from his mouth and his eyes rolled back. When he almost fainted, the operation was over. This is just a microcosm of a part of the war world. There are many similar and even more terrifying things happening. Bloody, cruel, disgusting, cold-blooded. For a moment, Jello could think of countless words to describe these scenes. And all this made Jello hate the guy who caused all this even more. Mono. Jello gritted his teeth and angrily chanted this name. When Jello was angry, his telekinesis was activated involuntarily, and some inanimate objects close to him exploded directly. This action attracted the attention of many cosmic people, but they were curious, and they did not dare to approach a strong man who was suspected to be angry. After a little slowing down, Jello walked deeper into the underground city. The scenery along the way made him angry, and things like the one just now happened all the time. Jello didn't feel much when he knew about this kind of thing through Luluo's description, but when he really saw it with his own eyes, he could not control his anger. The blood in his heart was surging all the time, and no matter how much Jello looked at it, he would not be numb. But can you change all this by just being passionate? No. It depends on being strong. Strong enough to crush everything. And this is exactly what Jello lacks at the moment. If Jello only trained and made armor for self-protection at the beginning, and only out of indignation when he met villains, then now he has a real idea to become stronger and change the world. Even if it is just a bud. I've never seen a face before. Suddenly, a voice called Jello. Jello turned around and saw a 2-meter-tall man with 2 short-handled battle axes on his back, dark grey skin, 2 horns on his head, no hair, and facial features that barely resembled humans. There were 8 fangs on the side of his mouth, like an orc warrior in a fantasy novel. "What do you want to do?" Jello spoke, but his voice was a little hoarse. This was not a way for him to disguise himself. Of course it's a fight. The orc warrior looked at Jello. He stretched out his hand covered with scars and bloodstains, pointed at Jello and said, "You should know that no one here can refuse a challenge. Come on, fight me. I can't resist the desire to tear off your head." Ha 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 ha. Even with just a sniff, Jello could feel the strong bloody smell on the orc warrior. This was the smell that required the slaughter of at least nearly 1,000 people. After a while, when the orc warrior wanted to speak to Jello, Jello raised his head, looked at the orc warrior with his eyes, and asked him in a hoarse voice, "Tell me, where do we start the fight? Be quick." Seeing that Jello agreed so readily, the orc warrior smiled, took off the 2 battle axes behind him as quickly as possible, and shouted loudly, "Now I ask your answer." In the Dungeon of War world, the orc warrior who challenged Jello attacked at a terrifying speed. Due to the special nature of his race, the muscles of the orc warrior swelled within 1/100th of a second, giving him the power to smash steel. Even a simple punch could reach the point of breaking the sound barrier. And when a pair of arms that could break the sound barrier wield a pair of battle axes made of alloy, what kind of power could he exert? Previous combat experience told the orc warrior that it was to cut the enemy into pieces. Go to hell. The orc warrior roared to increase his power. His pupil-less eyes seemed to have seen Jello being cut into pieces. The 2 axes fell towards Jello, and the terrible pressure could already set off a shock wave. Even before they fell, a lot of smoke and dust were already raised, and there was a loud noise. Boom. The huge noise came out of nowhere, and many cosmic people around who had organs similar to ears covered their ears, and many of them had perforated eardrums. Although the smoke and dust blocked his view, the orc warrior boasted confidently, "Ha ha ha. Another guy died under my axe." After being confident, the orc warrior wanted to quickly take some things from Jello's body and exchange them for more things that would make him stronger from others. So the orc warrior wanted to take back his double axes. But at this time, no matter how hard the orc warrior tried, he couldn't pull out the double axes. Just when he was confused, the smoke and dust dissipated, allowing him to see the scene clearly. "Impossible!" the orc warrior exclaimed. Jello was still standing there, not hurt at all. Jello put his left hand in his pocket, clenched his right hand with the hunter's armor slightly, stared at the orc warrior with his eyes, and said coldly, "Are you happy?" It was telekinesis. Jello used telekinesis to form a barrier outside his body, and also locked the orc warrior's double axes tightly, so that he could not move at all. What? Before the orc warrior could react, Jello's telekinesis exploded, shocking the orc warrior back again and again. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Jello leaped out, his figure slightly lifted into the air, and his right leg, which was full of power, whipped the orc warrior's head like a whip. Bang! Crack! Crack! A variety of sounds mixed together. There was the sound of Jello kicking the orc warrior, and the sound of the orc warrior's skull shattering. This whip kick not only broke the orc warrior's skull, but also kicked out 7 of the orc warrior's 8 exposed teeth, leaving only 1 fang exposed, looking shaky. The terrifying power not only broke the orc warrior's skull, but also continued to spread throughout his body, and finally cracked all his bones. One move. Jello only needs one move to make the orc warrior unable to get up again. Similarly, he can also make the orc warrior die on the spot. The terrible force made the orc warrior fly out, but not far away. The orc warrior was controlled in midair by Jello's telekinesis. Telekinesis is an ability related to the spirit, and the spirit is closely related to emotions. What a coincidence! Jello was very angry at this time. After controlling the orc warrior in midair, Jello slowly walked towards the orc warrior. Looking at Jello slowly walking towards him, the orc warrior was extremely scared. He tried to break free like crazy, but to no avail. When Jello walked in front of the orc warrior even closed his eyes in fear. He didn't dare to imagine how he would die next. "Next, I will ask you questions and you can answer them. Don't lie." Jello's hoarse voice reached the ears of the orc warrior. The orc warrior was very confused by this, but he still nodded to show that he understood. After all, who wouldn't be happy to live a little longer? Jello bit his back teeth and whispered, "How many people have you killed here? Be specific, quickly." 934. The Orc Warrior answered immediately. Listening to the Orc Warrior's answer without hesitation, Jello felt it a little. Heartbeat, blood pressure, breathing, all the same as before, no lie. "How did you feel when you killed them?" Jello asked again. As soon as the voice fell, the Orc Warrior felt that there was a trick and immediately shouted, "I regret it very much. I regret it very much." Hearing this, Jello's head was immediately covered with black lines, and then he increased his telekinesis output and directly crushed one of the Orc Warrior's hands. In an instant, blood splattered everywhere, and the Orc Warrior screamed in pain. "Tell the truth, otherwise it will be your head or other important organs next time," Jello threatened fiercely. In the world of war, soft means will not work. Jello knows this very well. Therefore, extraordinary means in extraordinary situations are not unacceptable to Jello. And this guy with horns on his head said that he had killed more than 900 people before, and then said that he regretted it. Did he think Jello was stupid? Hiss, a strange sound came out of the Orc Warrior's trachea, and then he said, "I was very satisfied at the time." After speaking, Jello's face suddenly turned black, he withdrew his telekinesis, and the Orc Warrior fell to the ground under the pull of gravity. After surviving the disaster, the Orc Warrior looked very happy. "Thank you, sir, thank you, sir, thank you for not killing me." The Orc Warrior was thinking about how to retaliate in his heart while confusing Jello with his mouth. "Not killing? You are too naive. I don't like killing, but it doesn't mean that others don't like it." Jello sneered twice, then deliberately turned up the volume and deliberately said to all the cosmic people around him, "The rule here is that no matter when the challenge is, you can't refuse it. Am I right, everyone?" As soon as these words came out, the Orc Warrior was immediately disheartened. He said this not long ago. This rule is the iron rule of the dungeon, and no one can violate it, even if they're seriously injured. After a moment, many hostile eyes were cast on the Orc Warriors. They surrounded the Orc Warriors and began to kill them cruelly. The Orc Warriors kept screaming, and Jello took the opportunity to escape. Before escaping, Jello took a look at the miserable state of the Orc Warriors. Even worse than Shangyang, Jello thought to himself. Looking at the scene in front of him, which might be the most common scene in the war world, Jello felt very depressed while breathing a sigh of relief. Just when Jello was feeling complicated, a hand silently pressed on Jello's shoulder and asked softly, "How is it? Are you feeling better?" "Who?" Jello, who had just reacted, turned around suddenly and immediately found a figure in black armor standing behind him. In the war world, Jello only knew one person with such a unique outfit, Mingy. Mingy stood in the dark, with his right hand on Jello's shoulder, and his head looked in the direction where the Orc Warriors will challenge one after another. The monthly ticket reward has accumulated enough, and there will be another update at 9:30. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone, see you in the next video.